At 1:13 in the morning, pediatric nurse Ryan Carter answered a call that wasn't meant for him. On the other end, a voice trembling with grief and desperation, a billionaire heiress who had just lost everything and needed help from a stranger. What he did next would shatter the carefully constructed walls between their worlds and set in motion a series of events neither could have predicted. This is a story about a single choice made in the middle of the night, when exhaustion meets impulse and two broken lives collide in the most unexpected way. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and stick around until the end, because what starts as a wrong number becomes something neither of them saw coming. The phone screamed into the darkness at 1:13 a.m. Ryan Carter's hand shot out from under the covers, knocking over a half-empty water glass on the nightstand. The sound of it hitting the carpet barely registered. His body moved on autopilot, the kind of mechanical response that comes from years of being on call, even when you're not. He squinted at the screen. Unknown number. His thumb hovered over the decline button. Then he thought about Sophie. She was 6 years old and asleep down the hall, but the reflex was always the same. What if it's the school? What if it's Mrs. Patterson from next door? What if something's wrong? So he answered, "Hello?" The voice that came through wasn't what he expected. "David, thank God. I didn't know who else to call. He's gone. My father is gone and they're—" The woman's voice cracked, splintering into something raw and desperate. "They're already circling. I don't know what to do." Ryan sat up, blinking hard against the pull of sleep. "I think you've got the wrong number." Silence. Then quieter, almost a whisper. "What?" "This isn't David. I don't know who David is." He heard her breathing on the other end, uneven and shaky. For a moment he thought she might hang up. Instead, she let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Of course it's the wrong number. That's—" She stopped. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have—" "Wait," Ryan said, surprising himself. "Are you okay?" Another pause, longer this time. "No," she said finally. "No, I'm really not." Ryan rubbed his face with his free hand. He should hang up. He should mumble something polite and go back to sleep and forget this ever happened. He had a shift in 6 hours. Sophie had dance class at 9. There was laundry in the dryer and bills on the kitchen counter, and a life that didn't leave room for strangers falling apart at 1 in the morning. But something in her voice hooked him. It wasn't just the grief. It was the way she said it. Like she was shocked to be admitting it out loud. Like she'd spent so long pretending everything was fine that the truth had finally broken through and she didn't know what to do with it. He knew that feeling. "You said your father," Ryan said carefully. Did something happen tonight?" "This afternoon." Her voice steadied slightly, like talking to someone. Anyone was giving her something to hold on to. "Heart attack? He was fine yesterday. We had breakfast. He was fine." Ryan closed his eyes. He'd seen it too many times at the hospital. Families sitting in waiting rooms, still holding coffee cups, still wearing yesterday's clothes, trying to process the impossible speed of loss. "I'm sorry," he said. I'm really sorry. I called the wrong number." She sounded almost dazed now. "I went through my contacts and he changed his number last month and I forgot to update it and She stopped again. "I'm not making sense." "You're making sense. I called a complete stranger in the middle of the night." "Yeah, you did." He heard what might have been a laugh. It was a broken sound, but it was something. "I should let you go," she said. "You should," Ryan agreed. Neither of them hung up. The silence stretched out between them, and Ryan found himself staring at the ceiling, phone pressed to his ear, waiting for something he couldn't name. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Sure." "Do you ever feel like—" She hesitated. "Like you're supposed to be handling things better than you are? Like everyone expects you to have it together and you're just barely holding on?" Ryan let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Every single day," he said. "Yeah." Her voice softened. "Yeah, me too." They stayed on the line for another moment, two strangers sharing the kind of honesty that only seems possible in the dead of night, when the rest of the world is asleep and nothing feels quite real. "What's your name?" Ryan asked. "Isabella." She paused. Isabella Vaughn. The name landed like a stone. Ryan sat up straighter, suddenly wide awake. He knew that name. Everyone knew that name. Vaughn Industries. Vaughn Medical Foundation. The Vaughn family practically owned half the city's skyline. He'd seen the buildings with their names on them, walked past the cancer wing at the hospital that bore her father's name. You're... He stopped himself. Right. Okay. You know who I am? It wasn't a question. I mean, yeah, kind of hard not to. And now you're wondering why someone like me is falling apart to a stranger on the phone at 1 a.m. Actually, I was wondering why someone like you doesn't have anyone else to call. The silence that followed felt heavier. That's a good question, Isabella said quietly. Ryan looked at the clock. 1:24 a.m. He should be sleeping. He should be doing 100 different things that weren't this. Where are you right now? He heard himself ask. Home. The estate. It's... She made a sound that might have been bitter. It's very big and very quiet, and I hate it. Are you alone? The staff is here. Security. But yes, alone. Ryan stood up, pacing the small bedroom. This was insane. He was a pediatric nurse who lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in a part of town where the streetlights only worked half the time. She was Isabella Vaughn. They existed in completely different worlds. You said people are circling, he said. What did you mean? My stepmother. Isabella's voice hardened. My father remarried 5 years ago, Vanessa. She's very good at playing the grieving widow, but I saw her on the phone with the lawyers before his body was even cold. The foundation, the company, everything he built, she's going to try to take it all. Can she do that? I don't know, maybe. Probably. Isabella laughed, but there was no humor in it. My father and I weren't exactly close the last few years. Complicated doesn't even begin to cover it. I walked away from a lot of the family business stuff. Thought I was making a point. Now I'm realizing I might have walked away from any leverage I had. What about the will? I'll find out tomorrow. Meeting with the lawyers at 10. Vanessa will be there with her legal team looking like she just stepped out of a salon while She stopped. Sorry, you don't need to hear all this. I asked, Ryan said simply. Why? It was a fair question. He didn't have a good answer. Because you sounded like you needed someone to ask, he said. Another silence, then, I can't remember the last time someone just listened, without an agenda. Ryan thought about his own life, about the weight of being the only parent Sophie had, about the nights when he'd sat in this same spot wondering if he was doing any of it right, about how rare it was to talk to someone who didn't need something from him. Yeah, he said, I get that. He heard her breath catch, just slightly. This is going to sound crazy, Isabella said. Probably. Would you... She stopped, started again. Could I see you? In person. I know how that sounds. I know you don't know me, and this is completely inappropriate, and you have every reason to hang up right now, but When? Ryan asked. The question surprised them both. Now? Isabella's voice lifted slightly, almost hopeful. I know it's late. I know that's asking too much. Ryan looked at the clock again. 1:31 a.m. He looked at his scrubs hanging over the chair, at the list of things he needed to do tomorrow, at all the very sensible reasons to say no. Then he thought about Sophie asleep down the hall, about the neighbor who owed him a favor, about the strange pull he felt toward this woman he'd never met. Give me your address, he said. 20 minutes later, Ryan was standing on Mrs. Patterson's doorstep in jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt, trying to explain why he needed her to watch Sophie at almost 2 a.m. Mrs. Patterson, 73 years old, sharp as a tack, and the closest thing to family Ryan had in this city, looked at him over her reading glasses. This about a woman? She asked. It's complicated. That means yes. She was already reaching for her coat. She pretty? I haven't actually met her yet. Mrs. Patterson stopped. Ryan Michael Carter, please tell me you're not going to meet some stranger you found on the internet. Phone call. Wrong number. And before you ask, yes, I know how it sounds. It sounds like you've lost your mind. Maybe. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. Probably. But Mrs. Patterson, she sounded She needed help, real help, and I couldn't leave it alone. The older woman studied him for a long moment, and Ryan could see the wheels turning. She'd known him since he moved to the building 4 years ago, pregnant girlfriend who left 6 months later, new baby who became his entire world. She'd seen him at his lowest and never once judged. "You've got your phone charged?" she asked finally. "Yes." "Location sharing on?" "I'll turn it on." "And you'll text me every hour?" "Every hour," she sighed, grabbing her keys. "Go." "But Ryan, whatever this is, be careful. You've got a little girl who needs you in one piece." "I know." "Do you?" He met her eyes. "I do." The drive to the Vaughn estate took 40 minutes. Ryan had looked up the address on his phone and immediately regretted it. The place wasn't just in a nice neighborhood, it was its own neighborhood. Private gates, security checkpoints, houses that probably had more square footage than his entire apartment building. His beat-up Honda looked ridiculous pulling up to the entrance. The security guard at the gate leaned out of his booth, eyebrows raised. "Help you?" Ryan suddenly realized how completely insane this was going to sound. "Isabella Vaughn called me. Asked me to come." The guard's expression went from skeptical to outright suspicious. "Name?" "Ryan Carter." The guard picked up a phone, speaking in low tones Ryan couldn't hear. Then he hung up and hit a button. The massive iron gates swung open. "Follow the main drive to the house," the guard said, still looking at Ryan like he might be planning a heist. "Park in the circle." The driveway was longer than Ryan's street. Manicured lawns stretched out on either side, lit by subtle landscape lighting that probably cost more than his car. Trees that had to be decades old lined the path. Sculptures that looked like they belonged in museums dotted the grounds. And then he saw the house. It wasn't a house. It was a monument. 3 stories of stone and glass, lit from within like something out of a movie. Wings extending in both directions. Windows that went floor to ceiling. The kind of place that made you immediately aware of every stain on your clothes and every scuff on your shoes. Ryan parked his Honda next to what he was pretty sure was a Bentley and sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel. What the hell was he doing? He pulled out his phone and texted Mrs. Patterson. "I'm here. Place is insane. We'll update in an hour." Her response came immediately. "Don't touch anything expensive." Ryan almost laughed. Then he got out of the car. The front door opened before he could knock. Isabella Vaughn stood in the doorway, and Ryan's first thought was that she looked nothing like he'd expected and exactly like he'd imagined all at once. She was wearing jeans and an oversized sweater that looked expensive despite its casual cut. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her eyes, red-rimmed and exhausted, were the kind of green that seemed to shift in the light. No makeup, no jewelry except for a simple watch. She looked younger than 30 and older and completely overwhelmed. "You actually came," she said. "I said I would." People say a lot of things. They stood there for a moment, stranger and stranger, separated by a doorway and an entire world of difference. "I'm Ryan," he said, feeling stupid for stating the obvious. "Isabella." She stepped back. "Come in, please." The inside of the house was somehow even more intimidating than the outside. Marble floors, artwork that belonged in galleries, a chandelier that probably cost more than Ryan made in a year. Everything was perfect and pristine and felt like a place where people lived carefully, as if afraid to disturb the expensive silence. Isabella led him through hallways that seemed to go on forever, past rooms he only glimpsed, a library with floor-to-ceiling books, a dining room with a table that could seat 20, a living room with furniture that looked like it had never been sat on. They ended up in what she called the informal sitting room, which was still nicer than any room Ryan had ever been in. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over gardens lit by moonlight, a fireplace that wasn't lit, couches that actually looked comfortable. "Can I get you something?" Isabella asked, and Ryan could hear the practiced politeness in her voice, the default setting of someone raised to be a perfect host. "Coffee, water, something stronger." "Isabella," he said gently. She stopped. "You don't have to do that," Ryan continued. "The host thing, this isn't a social call." Her shoulders dropped slightly, some of the tension leaving her body. "No, it's not." She sat down on one of the couches, curling her legs under her in a way that made her look young and lost. "I still can't believe you came." Ryan sat across from her, keeping some distance. Honestly, me neither. Why did you? It was the same question she'd asked on the phone, and he still didn't have a better answer. I've been where you are, he said finally. Not that, he gestured vaguely at the palatial room, all this, but the other part, losing someone, feeling like you're drowning and everyone expects you to swim like it's easy. I know what it's like to need help and not know who to ask. Isabella studied him with those shifting green eyes. When? 4 years ago. Sophie, my daughter, her mom left when she was 6 months old. Just walked out one day. Said she couldn't do it anymore. Ryan ran his hand over his jaw. I was working doubles at the hospital, trying to figure out diapers and formula and why babies cry for no reason. My parents were gone. Car accident when I was in college. No siblings. It was just me and this tiny person who needed everything, and I had no idea what I was doing. How did you manage? Badly, at first. Ryan smiled slightly. I burned more bottles than I got right. She cried, I cried. There were nights I sat in the bathroom with the shower running so she wouldn't hear me lose it. But then, I don't know. You figure it out. Because you have to. And now? Now Sophie's 6 and she's the best thing that ever happened to me, even though I'm still figuring it out and probably doing half of it wrong. He looked at Isabella. But that first year, when everyone kept telling me how strong I was and how well I was handling it, I wanted to scream. Because I wasn't handling it. I was barely surviving. Isabella's eyes were wet. That's exactly how I feel. I know. Everyone keeps saying how sorry they are, and they mean it, but they also keep looking at me like I should have some kind of plan, like I should know what to do next. And I don't. I don't have any idea. She pulled her knees up to her chest, making herself smaller on the expensive couch in the expensive house. My father and I hadn't spoken in 3 months, she said quietly. We had this huge fight about, it doesn't even matter now. I said things I can't take back. He said things that hurt, and I walked away thinking I had all the time in the world to fix it. Her voice broke. I was supposed to have time. I'm sorry, Ryan said, and meant it. He wasn't perfect. We had our issues, but he was my dad, you know? And now he's gone, and I can't call him and tell him I'm sorry. I can't fix any of it. Ryan moved to sit beside her. Not too close, but close enough. The last thing my mom said to me before the accident was, drive safe, we love you. I just spent the weekend with them and we'd argued about something stupid. I think it was about my major, or maybe my girlfriend at the time. I can't even remember, but I left kind of mad and she called me the next day to make sure we were okay, and I was still being stubborn about it. Then 2 days later, the highway accident. He looked at his hands. I would give anything to go back to that phone call and tell her I loved her too, that the argument didn't matter. But I can't. None of us can go back. So what do? You live with it. You carry it. Some days are harder than others. He glanced at her. And you stop pretending you're okay when you're not. Isabella wiped at her eyes with the sleeve of her sweater. I'm really not okay. Yeah, I got that. They sat there in the silence of the massive house, and gradually Isabella started to talk. Not the careful, curated version of herself that Ryan suspected she showed the world, but something raw. She told him about growing up in this house, about a childhood that looked perfect from the outside but felt lonely from the inside, about a mother who died when she was 12 and a father who buried himself in work rather than grief, about expectations and pressure and the weight of a name that opened doors but also locked you into a certain kind of life. Everyone assumes it's easy, she said, the money, the opportunities. And sure, I've never had to worry about bills or where my next meal is coming from. But you know what's hard? Never knowing if people actually like you or just what you represent. Never being sure if achievements are yours or just a product of your last name. Having every relationship feel like a negotiation. Is that what happened with your dad? Ryan asked. Partly. Isabella pulled a throw pillow into her lap, fingers worrying at the fringe. He wanted me to take over the foundation, be the face of the family legacy. And I wanted, I don't even know, something that was mine, something I chose. We fought about it constantly. I ended up walking away from most of my official duties about a year ago. Told him I needed space to figure out who I was outside of being Yvonne. How'd he take it? Not well. Said I was being selfish, said I didn't understand responsibility. We said a lot of things. She looked up. The worst part is that he was right about some of it. I was running away. From him, from the pressure, from having to make hard choices. And now he's gone, and I can't. Her voice broke completely then, and Ryan did the only thing that felt right. He put his arm around her shoulders and let her cry. Isabella Vaughn, billionaire heiress, socialite, untouchable princess of the city's elite, sobbed into the shoulder of a stranger's t-shirt in the early hours of the morning, and Ryan just held her and didn't try to fix it, because some things couldn't be fixed. Eventually, the tears subsided into hiccups, then silence. Isabella pulled back, embarrassed. I'm sorry, I got your shirt all wet. It'll dry. I don't usually fall apart on people I just met. Good thing I'm not people then. Ryan offered a small smile. I'm just the wrong number. That got a watery laugh out of her. Best wrong number I ever dialed. Worst for me. Do you know what time it is? She checked her watch. Almost 3. Ugh, Christ. Ryan stood, stretching. His back popped. I've got work in 4 hours. You're leaving. Isabella stood too, and Ryan couldn't tell if she was relieved or disappointed. I should, but he hesitated. Can I ask what you're doing tomorrow, after the lawyer meeting? I don't know. Probably sitting here trying not to think about how badly it's going to go. What if you didn't do that? What do you suggest? Ryan pulled out his phone, typing quickly. Sophie, my daughter, she's got dance class at 9. Then we usually grab lunch somewhere terrible that she loves. Then I've got the afternoon off. Nothing fancy, very normal, probably boring compared to your usual schedule. Are you? Isabella looked genuinely confused. Are you inviting me to hang out with you and your 6-year-old? Yeah, I guess I am. Ryan pocketed his phone. Look, I know it sounds weird, but I think you could use normal right now. No lawyers, no estate planning, no one treating you like you're made of glass or money, just regular life if you want. I don't know anything about kids. Sophie's easy. She talks enough for 3 people, so you won't have to worry about awkward silences. Isabella studied him, and Ryan could see her trying to figure out the angle, the catch, what he wanted from her. It made him sad, that instant suspicion. There's no trick, he said quietly. I'm not after anything. I just think you shouldn't be alone tomorrow, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only person you know who doesn't have an agenda. You're serious. Completely. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. Maybe that's exactly why. Ryan headed toward the hallway. Think about it. Text me if you want to come. No pressure either way. Isabella followed him back through the maze of hallways to the front door. Outside, the sky was starting to lighten at the edges, that pre-dawn gray that meant morning was coming whether you were ready or not. Ryan, she said as he stepped onto the front step. He turned back. Thank you for coming, for all of it. You don't have to thank me. I know, but I am anyway. He nodded, then walked to his ridiculous Honda parked next to the Bentley. As he pulled away, he looked in the rearview mirror and saw Isabella still standing in the doorway, a small figure in a too big house, watching him leave. His phone buzzed. Mrs. Patterson. Still alive? Ryan smiled and voice texted back. Still alive. Heading home now. Thanks for watching her. Anytime, baby. But you're telling me everything tomorrow. Deal. The drive back felt surreal. The city was empty at this hour, just delivery trucks and the occasional taxi. Ryan's mind kept replaying the night, the phone call, the decision to go, Isabella crying on his shoulder in a room that probably cost more than he'd make in his lifetime. He should feel out of his depth. He should be freaking out about the absolute insanity of what he'd just done. Instead, he just felt steady, like he'd done the right thing, even if it made no logical sense. Mrs. Patterson was waiting in his apartment, knitting and watching some old movie on mute. She looked up when he came in, eyebrows raised in question. So? She whispered. Who is she? Ryan sat down heavily on the couch. You're not going to believe me. Try me. Isabella Vaughn. The knitting needles stopped. The Vaughn family? Those Vaughns? Those Vaughns. Ryan Michael Carter. I know. That girl is... I know. Mrs. Patterson set down her knitting, studying him with the same look she'd given him 4 years ago when he showed up at her door with a screaming baby and desperation in his eyes. "You like her," she said. "I don't even know her." That wasn't the question. Ryan scrubbed his hands over his face. "I think she needs a friend." "And you're volunteering?" "Apparently. This isn't going to be simple, you know. Girl like that, she's got complications you can't even imagine." "I know. And you're doing it anyway." "I invited her to hang out tomorrow, after Sophie's dance class." Mrs. Patterson laughed, a sound of pure disbelief. "You invited a billionaire to watch your kid eat chicken nuggets?" "Pretty much. Lord have mercy." But she was smiling. "You've got a good heart, Ryan. Too good sometimes. Just be careful, okay? People like that, they live different lives. Don't forget where you come from." "I won't." She patted his knee and stood, gathering her things. "Go check on Sophie. Then get some sleep. You look like hell." After she left, Ryan did exactly that. He stood in Sophie's doorway, watching her sleep in the pink pajamas with the unicorns on them, her stuffed elephant clutched to her chest. She looked so peaceful, so sure that the world was safe and good, and that her dad would always be there to keep it that way. He hoped he could live up to that faith. His phone buzzed. Unknown number, except now he knew exactly who it was. The message was simple. "What time tomorrow?" Ryan smiled and typed back, "Dance class ends at 11. I'll text you the address." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "I'll be there." Ryan set his alarm for 6, 3 hours of sleep if he was lucky, and collapsed into bed. His last thought before exhaustion claimed him was that he'd just done something either incredibly stupid or incredibly important, and he wouldn't know which until tomorrow. Outside, the sun was beginning to rise on a day that would change everything. Neither of them knew it yet. Ryan's alarm went off at 6, dragging him out of sleep that felt more like passing out than actual rest. 3 hours. He'd gotten 3 hours. His body protested every movement as he hauled himself out of bed, joints cracking, eyes burning. The coffee maker became his best friend, and he stood in the kitchen in his boxers and t-shirt, watching it drip and trying to remember why he'd thought any of last night was a good idea. Then his phone lit up with a message from Isabella. "Meeting with lawyers at 10. Trying not to throw up. Thanks again for last night." Right, that was why. He typed back, "You'll be fine. Text me when you're done." Sophie wandered out of her room 20 minutes later, hair sticking up in every direction, dragging her elephant behind her. "Morning, bug," Ryan said, scooping her up even though his back immediately regretted it. "You smell like coffee," she mumbled into his shoulder. "That's because I'm basically made of coffee right now." Mrs. Patterson was here. She gave me cookies before bed. Of course she did. Ryan set her down. "How about some actual breakfast?" They fell into their Saturday morning routine. Pancakes that Ryan only burned slightly, cartoons on the TV that Sophie had seen 100 times but still laughed at, dance clothes laid out on the couch. Normal. Easy. The kind of life Ryan had built from scratch and protected fiercely. "Dad," Sophie asked around a mouthful of pancake. "Don't talk with your mouth full." She swallowed dramatically. "Are we doing anything special today?" Ryan hesitated. How did you explain to a 6-year-old that you'd invited a billionaire heiress to hang out with them because she'd called the wrong number and cried on your shoulder? "Maybe," he said. "I invited a friend to have lunch with us after dance." Sophie's eyes lit up. "A friend? Do I know them?" "Nope." "Someone new." "What's her name?" "How do you know it's a her?" Sophie gave him the look. The one that said she was 6, not stupid. "Dad, you don't have guy friends." "I have guy friends." "Name one." "Dr. Martinez from work." "He doesn't count. That's work." She took another bite of pancake. "So what's her name?" "Isabella." "That's a pretty name. Is she pretty?" "Sophie." "It's a yes or no question, Dad." Ryan sighed. "Yes, she's pretty. But that's not... This isn't like that. She's just someone who needed a friend, okay? And I thought it would be nice for her to hang out with us." Sophie studied him with those 2 smart eyes that sometimes made him forget she was in 1st grade. "Okay," she said finally, "but if she's mean to you, I'm going to tell her to leave." "Deal." They finished breakfast and got ready, Ryan moving on autopilot while his mind kept drifting back to the previous night. The massive house. Isabella's tears. The way she'd looked standing in that doorway, so small despite everything around her. His phone buzzed at 9:30. Just finished. That was worse than I thought possible. Ryan called her. She answered on the first ring. Hey, he said. You okay? Define okay. Isabella's voice was tight, controlled. Vanessa showed up with 3 lawyers and a performance worthy of an Oscar. Lots of tears about losing her beloved husband, while simultaneously trying to claim rights to everything he built. The actual will reading is next week, but her team is already filing challenges. Can they do that? Apparently they can do whatever they want. Money buys a lot of lawyers. She let out a shaky breath. Sorry, I'm not handling this well. You're handling it exactly how anyone would handle it. I wanted to flip the table. Very mature, right? Did you flip the table? No. Then you're doing better than I would have done. Ryan grabbed his keys, gesturing for Sophie to get her dance bag. Listen, the offer still stands. Sophie's class ends at 11. No pressure, but send me the address, Isabella said quickly. I need to be somewhere that isn't here, somewhere normal. I can't promise normal, but I can promise Sophie will talk your ear off about why unicorns are scientifically possible if you believe hard enough. He heard a small laugh. That sounds perfect. Ryan sent her the address to Miss Jennifer's Dance Academy, which was about as far from the Vaughn estate as you could get without leaving the city. Strip mall location, parking lot with potholes, faded sign. The kind of place that ran on passion and determination rather than money. Sophie chattered the entire drive there, a monologue about her upcoming recital and how she was going to be a flower and Maddie was going to be a butterfly, but Maddie kept messing up her turns, so Sophie had to help her. That's nice of you, Ryan said, only half listening as he navigated traffic. Dad, you're not paying attention. I'm driving. You're thinking about Isabella. Ryan nearly ran a red light. What? You get this face when you're thinking hard about something. You had it this morning at breakfast too. Sophie kicked her feet against the back of his seat. Is she nice? I think so. I don't really know her yet. But you like her. Ryan caught himself. She's going through a hard time. I'm trying to help. Like when Mrs. Patterson's cat died and you helped her bury it in the garden? Kind of like that, yeah. Okay. Sophie went back to talking about dance class. Crisis apparently averted. They pulled into the dance studio parking lot at 8:55. Ryan helped Sophie out, grabbed her bag, and walked her inside to the familiar chaos of a dozen 6-year-olds in leotards and tutus warming up. Hi, Mr. Carter, Miss Jennifer called out. She was 25, perpetually energetic, and had gotten Sophie to actually enjoy dance after a disastrous attempt at soccer. Hey, Jen, she's all yours. Sophie, go stretch with the other girls. Sophie hugged Ryan's leg. You'll be here when class is done? Always am. And Isabella's coming? That's the plan. Cool. She ran off to join her friends, and Ryan found his usual spot on the bench where parents waited, next to Mrs. Kim, whose daughter was in Sophie's class. You look tired, Mrs. Kim observed. Rough night. The hospital? Something like that. He pulled out his phone, pretending to check emails while actually just trying to stay awake. The exhaustion was catching up with him now, 3 hours of sleep hitting him like a truck. He'd be useless at work tomorrow. His phone buzzed. I'm here, I think. There are several minivans and I'm very out of place. Ryan looked up and immediately spotted the problem. Isabella had pulled up in what was definitely not a minivan, some sleek black car that probably cost more than the entire strip mall. She was sitting in the driver's seat, looking uncertain. He walked outside and she rolled down the window. I didn't know what to wear, she said. And Ryan realized she'd changed since the lawyer meeting. Jeans again. A simple sweater. Less makeup than last night, but still more than necessary. She looked nervous. Is this okay? I've never done this before. Done what? Normal Saturday things, dance class. I don't know the protocol. Ryan couldn't help but smile. There is no protocol. Come on. She got out of the car, and he noticed she was shorter than he'd thought, maybe 5'6", without the heels she'd been wearing last night. She looked younger too, less polished, human. Fair warning, Ryan said as they walked toward the studio. Sophie knows you're coming, and she's already appointed herself your protector. If I'm mean to you, she's going to tell you to leave. You told her about me? I told her I invited a friend to lunch. She figured out the rest. How much does she know? Your name, that you're pretty, that's about it. Isabella stopped walking. You said I was pretty. She asked. I answered honestly. Don't make it weird. I wasn't. Isabella looked flustered, which was oddly endearing. Okay. They went inside, and Ryan saw the exact moment when recognition hit some of the other parents. Whispers started immediately. Mrs. Kim's eyes went wide. Even Miss Jennifer did a double take through the studio window. Isabella noticed too. She tensed, her whole posture changing into something more guarded. Hey, Ryan said quietly. Ignore them. They'll get over it. This was a bad idea. I shouldn't have come. Too late. Sophie just spotted you. Indeed, Sophie had broken away from stretching and was running toward the door, Miss Jennifer calling after her that class was starting. Sophie didn't care. She burst through the door and stopped right in front of Isabella, looking up with unabashed curiosity. Hi, Sophie said. I'm Sophie. Are you Isabella? Yes, hi. Isabella looked genuinely panicked, like she'd never talked to a child before. You're really pretty. My dad said you were, but he was right. Sophie reached out and grabbed Isabella's hand without warning. Do you want to watch me dance? I'm really good at pirouettes. Sophie, you need to get back to class, Ryan interjected. But now, Bug, you can talk to Isabella after. Sophie pouted but obeyed, running back into the studio. Through the window, Ryan could see her immediately telling all her friends about the pretty lady her dad brought, gesturing wildly. She's, Isabella started. A lot. Yeah. Sorry about that. No, I was going to say she's wonderful. Because Isabella was still looking through the window, watching Sophie demonstrate a turn to her friends. She's so confident, so sure of herself. That's all show. She gets nervous too. She just hides it better than most adults. They settled onto the bench, and Ryan was acutely aware of the stares, the whispered conversations. Isabella Vaughn, sitting in a strip mall dance studio in jeans and a sweater, watching first graders practice ballet basics. This is surreal, Isabella said quietly. What is? All of it. Yesterday my father died. This morning I sat in a conference room while lawyers talked about his estate like it was a business transaction. And now I'm here watching kids dance, and it's the most normal I've felt in years. Sometimes normal is underrated. Or maybe it's the most valuable thing there is. Isabella turned to look at him. Thank you for this. I know it's strange and you probably have a million questions about why someone like me doesn't have better options for how to spend a Saturday, but I don't have questions, Ryan said. And even if I did, it's none of my business. You needed somewhere to be. I offered. That's it. Isabella studied him for a long moment. You're very kind. I'm really not. I've been alone. I know what it feels like, that's all. They watched the class in comfortable silence. Sophie kept glancing over at them, clearly showing off. At one point, she executed a particularly enthusiastic turn and nearly kicked another girl in the face. Miss Jennifer had to separate them. She's got your smile, Isabella observed. Yeah? When she's concentrating, right before she does something she's not sure about. Same expression. Ryan hadn't noticed that before. He watched Sophie line up for turns across the floor, saw the little furrow between her eyebrows, the way she bit her bottom lip. He did that. The realization made something warm bloom in his chest. She looks like her mom, he said. The hair, the eyes, all her mom, but maybe some of me snuck in there. You don't talk to her? The mom? Nope. She left 4 years ago and never looked back. Signed away custody, sends a card on Sophie's birthday with a check inside. That's it. That must be hard. For Sophie. She doesn't remember her. I'm all she's got. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. Which is terrifying most days, if I'm being honest. I keep waiting to screw it up. You're doing fine, better than fine. She's happy. She's 6. Happiness is easy at 6. I don't think it is, Isabella said quietly. I think some kids are born knowing something's missing. Sophie doesn't feel like that. She feels loved, secure. Ryan didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. The class ended at 11 on the dot. Sophie came running out, sweaty and grinning. Did you see me? Did you see my jumps? I saw everything, Isabella said, and Sophie beamed. You're coming to lunch with us, right? If that's still okay. It's definitely okay. We're going to Tony's. They have the best grilled cheese in the entire world. Sophie grabbed Isabella's hand again, completely unself-conscious. You'll love it. Tony's Diner was 3 blocks away, a local institution that had been there for 40 years and looked it. Red vinyl booths with duct tape patches, a jukebox that only played oldies, laminated menus sticky with age. The food was cheap and good, and Tony himself still worked the grill. Isabella's car followed Ryan's Honda to the parking lot. When she got out, she looked at the diner like it might bite her. Trust me, Ryan said. It's not that. I haven't been to a place like this in a long time. Sophie was already dragging her toward the door. Inside, the lunch rush was starting. Tony looked up from the grill, saw Ryan, and waved. Carter, the usual? Yeah, and Ryan looked at Isabella. What do you want? What's good? Everything, Sophie declared. But the grilled cheese is the best. Grilled cheese, then. They slid into a booth, Sophie immediately claiming the spot next to Isabella. A waitress Ryan knew as Carol came over with waters and a kids' menu that Sophie didn't need because she already knew what she wanted. 2 grilled cheese, 1 with tomato, Ryan ordered. Fries all around, chocolate shake for Sophie. Make it 2 shakes, Isabella added, then looked embarrassed. Is that okay? I haven't had a real milkshake in years. Carol, make it 3 shakes, Ryan said, and the waitress grinned. Coming right up, honey. After she left, Sophie launched into a detailed explanation of every girl in her dance class, their skill levels, their personalities, who was friends with who and why Maddie couldn't do turns, but was really good at jumps, so it was okay. Isabella listened to all of it, actually engaged, asking questions that made Sophie light up even more. Ryan watched them, this bizarre pairing that shouldn't work but somehow did. The food came fast. Sophie attacked her grilled cheese with enthusiasm, getting ketchup on her face within 30 seconds. Isabella picked up her sandwich more carefully, took a bite, and her eyes widened. This is amazing, she said. Told you, Sophie said smugly. No, seriously. This might be the best grilled cheese I've ever had. Ryan laughed. You're probably just hungry. I'm definitely hungry, but this is legitimately incredible. Isabella took another bite, and there was something almost childlike in her enjoyment. How is the bread this good? Tony makes it himself, Ryan explained. Every morning. Been doing it for 40 years. They ate and talked, and slowly Isabella relaxed. The tension in her shoulders eased. She laughed at Sophie's stories. She stole one of Ryan's fries, and he pretended to be offended. It was easy. Normal. Exactly what Ryan had hoped for. Halfway through the meal, Sophie announced she had to use the bathroom. Ryan started to get up, but Sophie waved him off. I'm 6, Dad. I can go by myself. I know, but I'll be right back. Don't eat my fries. She slid out of the booth and headed toward the bathroom, leaving Ryan and Isabella alone for the first time since the studio. She's incredible, Isabella said immediately. Seriously, you're raising an incredible kid. She makes it easy most days. Ryan sipped his milkshake. So, the lawyer meeting. You want to talk about it? Isabella's expression darkened. Not particularly, but I probably should. She pushed her plate away. Vanessa's team is arguing that my father was planning to change his will before he died, that he'd expressed doubts about my ability to handle the foundation. They're trying to paint me as irresponsible, unreliable. Are you? What? Irresponsible. Unreliable. Isabella blinked. No, I don't think so. I made choices my father didn't agree with, but that's not the same thing. Then fight it. It's not that simple. Why not? Because they have resources I can't match. Because Vanessa has been planning this for who knows how long. Because I walked away from a lot of the operational stuff, and now that looks like abandonment. Isabella's voice rose slightly. Because maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Do you believe that? I don't know what I believe anymore. Ryan leaned forwards. Okay, then forget what you believe. What do you want? If you could have anything, what would it be? Isabella was quiet for a long moment, twisting the paper wrapper from her straw between her fingers. I want to finish what my father started, she said finally. The foundation. It was supposed to help kids who couldn't afford medical care. Kids who fell through the cracks. That was the original mission before it became about galas and tax write-offs and photo ops. I want to make it about that again. So do it. Ryan, I know it's not simple. I know there are lawyers and money and 100 other obstacles. But you just told me what you want. So the question is, are you willing to fight for it? Before Isabella could answer, Sophie came bouncing back to the table. There's a photo booth in the back. Can we take pictures, please? Ryan pulled out his wallet, counted quarters. Go crazy, we'll be there in a minute. Sophie grabbed the quarters and ran off, already planning poses. She doesn't know who I am, does she? Isabella asked. I told her your name. That's it. That must be nice, being seen as just a person. You are just a person. Not to most people. Isabella finished her milkshake. When we walked into that dance studio, everyone knew. The stares, the whispers, even that waitress, Carol, she recognized me. I could see it. So what? You think I don't get stares when I show up places with Sophie? Single dad, young kid, people make assumptions. You just stop caring after a while. I don't know if I can do that. Sure you can. It's easy. Watch. Ryan stood up, threw some cash on the table. Come on, we're taking terrible photo booth pictures, and you're going to stop caring what anyone thinks for 5 whole minutes. Isabella hesitated, then followed him to the back of the diner where Sophie was already in the photo booth, making faces at the camera preview. Come on, Sophie called. We need you both. They squeezed into the tiny booth, Ryan and Isabella on the small bench with Sophie on Ryan's lap. It was cramped and ridiculous, and Ryan was very aware of how close Isabella was, her shoulder pressed against his. Okay, everyone smile, Sophie directed. No, wait, make a funny face. Now a silly face. Now? The camera flashed 4 times, capturing Sophie's enthusiasm, Ryan's laughter, and Isabella's genuine smile. When the strip of photos printed out, Sophie grabbed it triumphantly. These are perfect. Can I keep them? They're yours, Bug. Sophie studied the photos happily. Isabella, you should smile more. You look really pretty when you smile. Isabella's cheeks flushed slightly. Thank you, Sophie. They left the diner shortly after, Sophie still clutching her photo strip. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright and warm. Sophie ran ahead to the car, and Ryan and Isabella hung back slightly. Thank you, Isabella said, for today. I needed this more than you know. You don't have to keep thanking me. I know, but I'm going to anyway. She looked at him, and there was something different in her expression, something open. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you really come last night when I called? You could have hung up, could have told me to call someone else. But you drove 40 minutes in the middle of the night to sit with a stranger. Why? Ryan thought about lying, about giving her an easy answer, but something about the way she was looking at him made him tell the truth. Because I heard something in your voice that I recognized, he said. That kind of desperation that comes from realizing you're more alone than you thought. I've been there. And when you're there, you don't need advice or solutions or people telling you it's going to be okay. You just need someone to sit with you in it. So that's what I did. Isabella's eyes were bright. I don't think I've ever met anyone like you. I'm pretty ordinary. No, you're really not. Sophie was calling from the car, waving frantically. Ryan waved back. I should go. She's got a birthday party at 3 and I need to wrap the present still. Of course. Isabella pulled out her phone. Would it be okay if I texted you? Not about anything important, just to talk? Yeah, that'd be fine. They stood there for another moment, neither quite ready to leave. Isabella? Ryan said. Yeah? Fight for it. The foundation. What your father wanted. Don't let them take it just because it's easier to walk away. She nodded slowly. I'll think about it. Ryan walked to his car where Sophie was waiting, already buckled in and ready to go. As he pulled out of the parking lot, he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Isabella still standing there, watching them leave, her phone in her hand. His own phone buzzed before they'd even made it to the end of the block. Today was perfect. Thank you for reminding me what normal feels like. He typed back one-handed while stopped at a red light. Anytime. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, tomorrow? If you're not busy, I'd like to see you both again. Sophie was humming in the back seat, looking at her photo strip. Ryan thought about his schedule, about the logical reasons to keep some distance, about how quickly this was all moving. Then he thought about Isabella's smile in the photo booth, genuine and unguarded. Sunday breakfast, he typed. My place. Fair warning, I'm a terrible cook. I'll bring coffee. Deal. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of birthday party chaos. Sophie hopped up on cake and running around with a dozen other 6-year-olds while Ryan made small talk with parents he barely knew. His mind kept drifting back to the diner, to the dance studio, to the impossible strangeness of the last 24 hours. He was playing a dangerous game, he knew that. Getting involved with someone like Isabella, someone from a completely different world. There were 100 ways it could go wrong, 100 reasons to pull back now before anyone got hurt. But when his phone buzzed later that evening with a photo Isabella had taken of the sunset from her window and the message, thinking about what you said, about fighting, you might be right, Ryan found himself smiling despite every logical objection his brain was raising. Sophie was already asleep, worn out from the party. Ryan sat on his couch in his small apartment and looked around at the life he'd built. Simple, stable, safe. Everything he'd worked for since the day Sophie was born, and he'd realized he was the only thing standing between her and the world. His phone buzzed again. See you tomorrow, Ryan typed back. See you tomorrow. He had no idea what he was doing, no plan, no endgame, no clear sense of how any of this was supposed to work. But for the first time in 4 years, he felt something other than the comfortable rhythm of routine. He felt alive. Outside his window, the city hummed with Saturday night energy. Somewhere across town, in a house too big for one person, Isabella Vaughn was probably sitting in that same expensive silence, thinking about impossible futures and unexpected connections. Tomorrow would come soon enough. They'd figure it out then. Or they wouldn't. Either way, Ryan thought as he finally headed to bed, it was going to be interesting. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of rain that made you want to stay in bed, but Sophie was up at 7, bouncing on Ryan's mattress like it was a trampoline. Is Isabella coming? Is she? You said breakfast. It's breakfast time. It's 7 a.m., bug. Normal people don't eat breakfast at 7 on Sunday. We do. We're not normal people. Ryan pulled a pillow over his face. Go watch cartoons. I'll get up in a minute. You said that yesterday and you fell back asleep for an hour. That was one time. It was 3 times. Ryan gave up and dragged himself out of bed. By 8:30, he'd managed to shower, convince Sophie that wearing her tutu to breakfast was not appropriate, and assess the disaster that was his kitchen. He'd promised breakfast. He should probably have something resembling food to offer. His phone buzzed. Running late. Lawyer called with updates. Still coming. Sorry. Ryan frowned at the message. Something in the tone felt off. But before he could respond, Sophie was pulling on his arm, asking if she could help make pancakes, and the moment passed. They were mid-batter mixing when his phone rang. Isabella's name flashed on the screen. Hey, Ryan answered, phone wedged between his shoulder and ear, while he tried to keep Sophie from dumping the entire bag of chocolate chips into the bowl. You close? Ryan, her voice cracked. I can't come, I'm sorry. Something happened and I can't. He heard it immediately, that same raw desperation from the first phone call. Worse, even. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. I don't know. She was crying now, trying to hide it and failing. I'm sorry. Tell Sophie I'm sorry. I have to go. Isabella, wait. She hung up. Ryan stood there in his kitchen, pancake batter on his hands, Sophie looking up at him with worried eyes. Is Isabella okay? Sophie asked. I don't know, bug. Ryan wiped his hands on a towel, mind racing. Listen, how would you feel about a field trip? 20 minutes later, they were in the car, Sophie strapped in the back with a granola bar because breakfast had been abandoned, Ryan driving toward the Vaughn estate with a growing sense that something had gone very wrong. He tried calling Isabella 3 times. No answer. He texted. Nothing. Dad, you're doing the worried face, Sophie observed. I'm not worried. You're doing it right now. Ryan glanced in his rearview mirror. Okay, maybe I'm a little worried. Is Isabella in trouble? I don't know. Maybe. Then we should help her. Sophie said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. That's what friends do. The estate looked different in daylight, less imposing, but somehow more isolated. Ryan pulled up to the security gate, and the same guard from Friday night leaned out. Mr. Carter, Ms. Vaughn isn't receiving visitors today. Did she tell you that, or did someone else? The guard's expression flickered. Sir, look, she called me upset. I just want to make sure she's okay. 5 minutes. I can't let you through without authorization. Ryan was about to argue when his phone rang. Isabella. I'm at the gate, he said immediately. What's going on? You came. She sounded wrecked. You brought Sophie? Yeah, the guard won't let us through. A pause. Then, put him on. Ryan handed his phone through the window. The guard listened, said, yes, ma'am, twice, and handed it back. The gate swung open. Straight to the house, the guard said, but he looked troubled. Ryan drove up the long driveway, that same impossible stretch of manicured perfection, and found Isabella sitting on the front steps of the mansion in jeans and an oversized cardigan, her hair pulled back, eyes red. He parked and got out. Sophie tumbled out after him, immediately running to Isabella. Are you okay? Dad said you were upset and we brought pancake batter, but we didn't finish making them because we had to come help you. Isabella let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and pulled Sophie into a hug that seemed to surprise them both. I'm okay, sweetheart. Thank you for coming. Ryan approached more slowly, taking in the scene. Something was very wrong. Isabella looked like she hadn't slept. There were moving boxes visible through the open front door behind her. What happened? He asked quietly. Isabella stood, keeping one hand on Sophie's shoulder like she needed the anchor. The will reading was moved up. Emergency session, they called it. Vanessa's lawyers pushed for it, claimed there were urgent business matters that couldn't wait. And my father left everything to her. Isabella's voice was flat, empty. The estate, the company, the foundation, everything. There's a trust for me, enough to live on, but the rest? All of it goes to Vanessa. Ryan felt his stomach drop. That can't be right. It's right. I saw the will, signed, dated, witnessed, 3 months ago, apparently, right after our last big fight. She laughed bitterly. He must have been so angry with me. I walked away from the foundation and he wrote me out of everything that mattered. Isabella, the lawyers gave me 30 days to vacate the estate. Vanessa's already moving in. She's upstairs right now, actually, measuring for new curtains. Isabella's hands were shaking. This was my mother's house, my childhood home, and I have 30 days. Sophie was looking between them, trying to understand. Ryan put a hand on Isabella's arm. Where's Vanessa now? Inside. Why? Because I want to talk to her. Ryan, don't. It won't change anything. But Ryan was already moving toward the door, that same protective instinct that kicked in whenever Sophie was threatened now extending to Isabella. He heard her following, heard Sophie's small feet on the marble floor. The house was different than Friday night. Boxes everywhere, staff moving through halls with armfuls of items, an air of organized chaos. Ryan followed the sound of voices to what looked like a study, where a woman in her early 40s stood with a tablet, directing 2 men who were removing paintings from the walls. Vanessa Vaughn was beautiful in the way expensive things were beautiful, polished, perfect, untouchable. She looked up when Ryan entered, her expression shifting from annoyance to calculation in an instant. I'm sorry, who are you? Ryan Carter, friend of Isabella's. Ah! Vanessa's smile was sharp. The nurse. Yes, I heard about you. How sweet that Isabella's making friends with the help. Ryan felt his jaw tighten, but before he could respond, Isabella was there, stepping between them. Don't, she said quietly. Ryan, this is Vanessa. Vanessa, you've made your point. Can you at least let me pack in peace? Of course, darling. Take all the time you need. Well, all the time you have left. Vanessa gestured to the men to continue. I'm just getting a head start on some redecorating. This house has been so dreadfully stuck in the past. Time for something fresh, don't you think? This was my mother's house, Isabella said, and her voice shook. Was being the operative word. Your father moved on, built a new life, made new choices. Vanessa's eyes were cold. You should too. Sophie had been quiet, but now she stepped forward, looking up at Vanessa with the kind of fearless directness only kids could pull off. You're mean, Sophie said simply. And you're making Isabella sad. You should stop. Vanessa looked genuinely shocked for a moment, then laughed. Well, at least someone here has some spine. She looked at Isabella. You might want to teach your little friends about boundaries, though. Children should be seen and not heard, particularly in grown-up matters. Sophie, come on, Ryan said, taking his daughter's hand before the situation could escalate. He looked at Vanessa. You might have the house and the money, but don't think for a second that makes you better than anyone. From where I'm standing, you're just someone who saw an opportunity and took it. I loved my husband, Vanessa said, but there was no emotion behind it. I'm sure you did, right up until you got what you wanted from him. Vanessa's expression hardened. Careful, Mr. Carter. You're out of your depth here. This is a family matter. Why don't you run along back to whatever neighborhood you came from and let the adults handle things? Ryan was about to respond when Isabella's hand on his arm stopped him. Please, she said quietly. Let's just go. They left, walking through halls that Isabella had grown up in, past rooms filled with memories that were being systematically erased. Sophie held Isabella's hand the whole way, and Ryan carried the weight of anger he couldn't do anything with. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray. Isabella looked at the house like she was seeing it for the last time. I'm sorry you had to see that, she said. I'm not sorry. I'm pissed. Ryan ran his hand through his hair. There has to be something you can do. Contest the will. File an appeal. With what? She has the resources. Isabella gestured helplessly. I have 30 days and a trust fund that'll keep me comfortable while she destroys everything my father built. What about the foundation? She's already announced plans to restructure it, turn it into something more, her words, relevant to modern philanthropy, which means galas and tax breaks and publicity instead of actually helping people. So fight her. How, Ryan? I appreciate the support, I do, but you don't understand how this works. She has lawyers, money, connections. She's been planning this for who knows how long. I can't or won't. Ryan's voice was sharper than he intended. Isabella's eyes flashed. Excuse me? You keep saying you can't fight this, but what I'm hearing is you won't. Because it's hard. Because you might lose. Because it's easier to walk away and feel sorry for yourself than to actually stand up for what matters. You have no idea what you're talking about, don't I? Because from where I'm standing, you're doing exactly what you did before. Things get tough, so you run. Your dad pushed too hard, so you walked away from the foundation. Vanessa shows up with lawyers, so you're ready to hand over everything without a fight. That's not fair, isn't it? Ryan knew he was pushing, knew he was probably crossing a line, but he couldn't stop. You told me yesterday that you wanted to finish what your father started, that you wanted to make the foundation about helping kids again, so do it. It's not that simple. Nothing worth doing is simple. They were standing in the driveway now, voices raised, Sophie watching with wide eyes. Isabella's face was flushed, angry, and hurt, and desperate all at once. You think I want this? She said, voice breaking. You think I want to lose my home, my father's legacy, everything? But I'm one person, Ryan. One person against an army of lawyers and money, and you're not one person. Ryan stepped closer, voice dropping. You have me. You have Sophie. You have anyone who believes in what that foundation was supposed to be. But none of that matters if you don't believe in yourself. I don't know if I do, Isabella whispered. Then figure it out, because I've watched you these past 2 days. I've seen you with Sophie, seen you smile for real, seen glimpses of who you are when you're not trying to live up to some impossible standard. That person? She's strong enough to fight this. She just has to decide to do it. Isabella was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. I'm scared. Good. Being scared means it matters. Ryan reached out, hesitated, then put his hand on her shoulder. Look, I can't tell you what to do. This is your life, your fight. But I can tell you that walking away won't make it hurt less. It'll just mean Vanessa wins without you even trying. Sophie, who'd been silent throughout the whole exchange, stepped forward and took Isabella's hand. You should fight, she said seriously, like in my princess movies. The bad guy always looks like they're winning at first, But then the princess remembers she's brave and she fights back and she wins. Isabella looked down at Sophie, then at Ryan, then back at the mansion behind them, where Vanessa was probably already redecorating her mother's bedroom. I don't even know where to start, she said. You start by not giving up, Ryan said. The rest we figure out as we go. For a long moment, Isabella just stood there, and Ryan could see the war happening behind her eyes. The easier path versus the right one. Safety versus risk. The comfortable misery of defeat versus the terrifying possibility of hope. Then something shifted in her expression. Not confidence, not yet, but something harder. Determination, maybe. Or just stubbornness. Okay, she said quietly. Okay? Okay, I'll fight. She wiped her eyes. I don't know how yet. I don't have a plan, but you're right. I can't just let her win. My father, whatever happened between us, whatever he put in that will, he believed in that foundation once, in helping people who needed it. I owe it to him to at least try. Ryan felt something ease in his chest. So what's first? I need to find a lawyer, someone who's not afraid of going up against Vanessa's team. Do you know anyone? Maybe. There's a woman, Patricia Chen. She used to work with my father before she started her own firm. Small operation, but she's brilliant, and she hated Vanessa. Isabella pulled out her phone. It's Sunday. She probably won't answer. Call anyway. Isabella dialed, put the phone to her ear. Ryan saw her surprise when someone actually picked up. Patricia, it's Isabella Vaughn. I know it's Sunday. I'm sorry to bother you, but... She paused, listening. You heard? Of course you heard. Look, I need help. Legal help. Are you taking clients? Another pause. No, I can't come to your office. Can you come to me? I'm at the estate, but yes, she's here. That's part of the problem. Isabella's eyes met Ryan's. Today, if possible. I know it's short notice, but thank you. Yes, I'll be here. She hung up, looking stunned. She's coming. Right now. She said she's been waiting for this call. What does that mean? I don't know, but she sounded angry. At Vanessa, I think. Isabella looked at the house again. I can't meet with her here. Not with Vanessa upstairs. I can't think here. So we leave, Ryan said. Come back to my place. We'll make those pancakes, Patricia can meet us there, and we'll figure out next steps somewhere that isn't... He gestured at the mansion. All this? Your apartment? It's small and probably messy and definitely not what you're used to, but it's private, and Vanessa doesn't know where it is. Isabella hesitated for only a moment. Let me grab some things. 5 minutes. She ran inside and came back with a laptop bag and an overstuffed tote. Ryan didn't ask what was in it. They loaded into their respective cars, and he led the way back across town, back to his neighborhood where the buildings were shorter and the streets were narrower, and everything cost a fraction of what she was used to. Sophie chattered the whole drive, excited about having Isabella over, already planning what movies they could watch and which toys she wanted to show her. Ryan let her talk, using the noise to quiet his own thoughts. He'd pushed hard back there. Maybe too hard. He'd said things that weren't his place to say, gotten involved in matters way above his pay grade. But watching Isabella stand there, defeated and lost, ready to give up before the fight even started, he couldn't let it happen. Maybe it was because he saw something in her he recognized. That moment when you're drowning and it would be so easy to just stop swimming. He'd been there. The night Sophie's mom left, he'd stood in the nursery at 2 a.m. with a screaming baby and thought about how impossible it all was. But he hadn't quit. He'd figured it out, and Isabella could too. They pulled into his building's parking lot, and Ryan felt a moment of self-consciousness. His Honda next to her expensive car, his building with its peeling paint and broken security door next to, well, everything she'd come from. But Isabella got out without hesitation, grabbing her bags and following him and Sophie up the stairs to the 3rd floor. Home sweet home, Ryan said, unlocking the door. Fair warning, I didn't exactly plan for company. The apartment was small, living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. Toys scattered across the floor despite Ryan's attempts to keep things organized. Sophie's artwork on the fridge. Dishes in the sink from yesterday. The kind of lived-in chaos that came from actually living somewhere. Isabella walked in and looked around, and Ryan waited for the judgment, the realization of just how different their worlds were. Instead, she smiled. It feels like a home. It's a mess. It feels loved. She set her bags down. Thank you for letting me invade your space. You're not invading, Ryan wasn't sure how to finish that sentence. Hiding, Isabella supplied. Regrouping. Sophie was already dragging Isabella toward her room, chattering about her stuffed animal collection. Ryan let them go and headed to the kitchen to finally attempt those pancakes. He was mid-batter mixing when his doorbell rang. Patricia Chen stood in the hallway, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an expensive briefcase. Mr. Carter, I'm Patricia Chen, Isabella called. Come in, Ryan looked toward Sophie's room where he could hear laughter. Occupied at the moment. Patricia stepped inside, took in the apartment with a quick assessing glance. This is quite a change from the estate. Yeah, well, Vanessa's redecorating. I heard. Patricia's expression hardened. That woman is a piece of work. I told William, Isabella's father, not to marry her. Told him she was after the money and the connections. He didn't listen. Did you know him well? I worked with the Vaughn Foundation for 15 years. William was brilliant, passionate about the work. Then Vanessa showed up, and suddenly everything became about appearances instead of impact. I left 2 years ago when it became clear which direction things were heading. Isabella emerged from Sophie's room looking younger and more relaxed than she had in hours. When she saw Patricia, some of that tension returned. Thank you for coming, Isabella said. I've been hoping you'd call. Patricia set her briefcase on the coffee table. Can we talk? They settled in the living room, Ryan making himself useful in the kitchen, but staying within earshot. Sophie had stationed herself on the floor with coloring books, pretending not to listen, but clearly absorbing everything. Tell me what happened, Patricia said. From the beginning. Isabella walked through it, the will reading, the 30 days, Vanessa's plans for the foundation. Patricia listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. And you want to contest the will? Patricia asked when Isabella finished. I don't know. I want to save the foundation, keep it focused on what it was meant to do. Those might be two different fights. What do you mean? Patricia leaned forward. Contesting the will is going to be expensive, time-consuming, and frankly difficult. Your father signed it of his own free will, had it properly witnessed. Unless you can prove he was coerced or mentally incompetent, he wasn't, Isabella said quietly. Then that's a losing battle. But the foundation, that's different. The foundation is a separate legal entity. It has a board, bylaws, a mission statement. Vanessa can't just do whatever she wants with it, even as the primary beneficiary of your father's will. Can't she? Not if someone challenges her. Not if someone makes noise about the foundation straying from its original purpose. Patricia smiled slightly. Not if someone files for an injunction to prevent major structural changes until a full board review can be conducted. Isabella sat up straighter. Can we do that? We can try. It'll buy you time at minimum. And if we can demonstrate that Vanessa's plans violate the Foundation's core mission, which they absolutely do, we might be able to force a more thorough review of the situation. How long would that take? Months, maybe longer. And it won't be cheap. I have the trust, I can pay. It's not just about money, Isabella. This is going to get ugly. Vanessa won't go down without a fight. There will be press, publicity, people taking sides. Your private life will become very public very quickly. Ryan watched Isabella process this, saw the fear war with determination. What if we don't fight? Isabella asked. What happens to the foundation? Vanessa does whatever she wants. Restructures it into a vanity project that looks good on paper but helps no one. The kids who relied on it, they fall through the cracks. Kids like the ones in the pediatric ward, Isabella said, looking at Ryan. He nodded. Kids whose families can't afford treatment, who get turned away from hospitals because of insurance, who need help and have nowhere else to go. Sophie looked up from her coloring. We have to help them. The adults all turned to look at her. She was holding a purple crayon and had that serious expression she got when she was worried about something. Why? Patricia asked gently. Because that's what the foundation is for. Isabella told me. It helps kids who are sick and don't have enough money. If the mean lady changes it, those kids won't get help anymore. Sophie looked at Isabella. You have to fight. For them. Isabella's eyes were wet again. It's going to be really hard, Sophie. Hard things are still important. My dad told me that. Ryan felt his throat tighten. He had told her that late one night when she was upset about a math problem. Hard things are still important. He hadn't realized she'd actually listened. Isabella looked at Patricia. If we file the injunction, what do we need? First, we need documentation. Proof of the Foundation's original mission, evidence of the work it's done, testimonials from people it's helped. Second, we need board support. Your father had other board members. We need to get them on our side. Most of them are Vanessa's friends now. All of them? Isabella thought about it. No. Dr. Harold Stevens. He was one of the original board members. He and my father started the foundation together. He retired from active participation a few years ago, but he's still technically on the board. Think he'd help? Maybe, if I can convince him. Isabella stood up, started pacing. This is crazy. A week ago, my biggest problem was deciding whether to go to a charity gala. Now I'm planning to go to war with my stepmother over my father's legacy. Cold feet? Patricia asked. Frozen feet, but Isabella looked at Sophie, then at Ryan. I'm doing it anyway. Patricia smiled for real then. Good. I'll start drafting the injunction tomorrow. You track down Dr. Stevens and any documentation you can find about the Foundation's original work. Medical records, grant applications, anything that shows what you were actually doing before Vanessa got involved. I don't have access to those files anymore. Everything's at the estate. Then we'll get creative. Patricia stood, gathering her briefcase. I'll be in touch tomorrow with next steps. In the meantime, keep a low profile. Don't engage with Vanessa if you can help it. And Isabella? Yes? This is going to get worse before it gets better. Make sure you're ready. After Patricia left, the apartment felt too quiet. Sophie had gone back to coloring, humming to herself. Isabella stood by the window, looking out at a neighborhood she'd probably never visited before last week. You okay? Ryan asked. I just committed to a legal battle with someone who has unlimited resources and a vendetta. So no, not really. Second thoughts? A million second thoughts. Isabella turned to face him. But I'm doing it anyway. For whatever that's worth. It's worth a lot. Is it? Because right now it feels like I'm about to lose everything for a fight I probably can't win. Ryan moved to stand beside her at the window. You want to know what I think? Not really, but you're going to tell me anyway. I think you already lost the things that mattered. The house, the inheritance. Those are just things. What matters is what you do next. Whether you let Vanessa win by default or you make her work for it. Very inspirational. You practiced that speech? Came up with it just now, actually. Ryan smiled slightly. Look, I don't know anything about legal battles or foundations or how your world works, but I know what it's like to fight for something that matters, and I know you're stronger than you think you are. Isabella was quiet for a long moment. How do you know that? Because you're still here. You could have stayed at the estate, could have called some other friend with better resources and connections. But you came here to my tiny apartment and you listened to a lawyer who told you how hard this is going to be, and you said yes anyway. Maybe I'm just stubborn. Maybe stubborn is exactly what you need to be. Sophie appeared beside them, tugging on Isabella's hand. Can we make pancakes now? I'm really hungry. The tension broke. Isabella laughed, wiping at her eyes. Yes, let's make pancakes. They moved to the kitchen, all three of them crowded into a space barely big enough for two. Ryan handled the mixing while Sophie directed operations, and Isabella tried to help, but mostly just got in the way. No, you have to flip it when the bubbles pop, Sophie instructed. I'm trying. Isabella held the spatula like it might bite her. You've never made pancakes before, have you? Ryan asked. I've had people make pancakes for me. Does that count? Not even a little. They burned the first batch. The second batch came out better but lopsided. By the third attempt, they'd found something resembling a rhythm. Sophie set the table with an elaborate arrangement of napkins and silverware. Ryan poured orange juice. Isabella managed to flip a pancake without it landing on the floor and looked unreasonably proud of herself. They ate at Ryan's small kitchen table, Sophie between them, talking a mile a minute about everything and nothing. It was domestic and strange and completely surreal, but also somehow exactly right. After breakfast, Sophie demanded a movie. They settled on the couch. Sophie curled between Ryan and Isabella, some animated film about princesses and dragons playing on the TV. Ryan felt the exhaustion of the last few days catching up with him, his eyes getting heavy. He woke up an hour later to find Sophie asleep against his shoulder and Isabella asleep on his other side, her head tilted back against the couch. The movie was still playing, credits rolling. For a moment, Ryan just sat there. These two people he'd somehow become responsible for. One his daughter, one a stranger who'd stumbled into his life 3 days ago, both trusting him enough to sleep. The weight of it settled on him, what he'd gotten himself into, what he'd encouraged Isabella to do. The fight that was coming and all the ways it could go wrong. But looking at them both, peaceful in this moment before the storm really hit, Ryan couldn't bring himself to regret it. His phone buzzed. Mrs. Patterson. Haven't heard from you all day. Everything okay? He typed back carefully, trying not to wake either of them. Everything's complicated. Tell you later. That girl still around? Yeah. You know what you're doing? Ryan looked at Isabella, at the way her expression had finally relaxed in sleep, no longer carrying the weight of impossible choices. Not even a little bit, he typed. Well, at least you're honest about it. Sophie stirred, blinking awake. She looked at Isabella sleeping, then at Ryan, and smiled. She's nice, Sophie whispered. Yeah, Bug. She is. Is she going to be okay, with the mean lady and everything? I don't know. I hope so. We'll help her, though, right? Ryan pulled Sophie closer. Yeah, we'll help her. Outside, the afternoon was fading into evening. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and strategy and the beginning of a fight that would test all of them. But for now, in this moment, they had pancakes and bad movies and each other. It wasn't much. But maybe it was enough. Isabella woke to the sound of a city she didn't recognize. Sirens in the distance, voices drifting up from the street below, the rumble of a bus passing. For a moment she forgot where she was, then felt the unfamiliar couch beneath her, the television still playing softly, and everything came rushing back. Ryan's apartment, the fight ahead, the life she'd just agreed to upend. She sat up carefully. Ryan was in the kitchen, moving quietly, and Sophie was nowhere to be seen. The light coming through the windows was wrong for late afternoon. What time is it? Isabella asked, her voice rough with sleep. Ryan turned, coffee mug in hand. Almost 7. You were out for a while. Sophie, too. I put her to bed about an hour ago. I slept for... Isabella checked her phone. 3 hours. She had 17 missed calls and twice as many texts, most from numbers she didn't recognize. Oh no. Yeah, the news broke about an hour after you fell asleep. Vanessa called a press conference. Isabella's stomach dropped. She pulled up a news site and there it was. Top headline. Vaughn Air Contest's late father's will, family drama unfolds. Below it, a photo of Vanessa looking appropriately grief-stricken, standing in front of the estate. What did she say? That you're having trouble accepting your father's final wishes. That she understands you're grieving but hopes you'll come to terms with his decisions. That she wants to honor his legacy by modernizing the foundation for a new generation. Ryan sat down beside her. She made it sound like you're the problem. Isabella scrolled through the article, seeing quotes from unnamed sources about her estrangement from her father, her irresponsibility, her inability to handle the family business. Every word carefully chosen to paint her as the spoiled daughter who couldn't accept reality. This is just the beginning, Isabella said quietly. She's setting the narrative. By tomorrow morning, I'll be the villain in my own story. So set it right. How? I can't exactly call a press conference from your couch. Why not? Isabella looked at him. You're serious. Patricia said this would get public. It already is. Vanessa got to go first, but that doesn't mean you can't respond. Ryan set his coffee down. What would you say? If you could tell your side? I don't know. That she's lying? That my father built that foundation to help people and she's turning it into a publicity machine? That I'm trying to save what he actually cared about? Isabella ran her hands through her hair. None of it sounds good. It all sounds like exactly what she said. A daughter who can't accept her father's choices. What if you don't talk about the will at all? What do you mean? Forget Vanessa for a second. Forget the estate and the money and all of it. Talk about the foundation, what it was supposed to do, what it actually did when it was working. Ryan leaned forward. She wants to make this about family drama. Don't let her. Make it about the kids who needed help and got it. Make it about the mission. Isabella stared at him. That's actually smart. Don't sound so surprised. No, I mean it. If I make this about the foundation's work instead of the inheritance, she was already pulling up contacts on her phone. I know someone, a journalist. She covered the foundation years ago, back when we were actually doing good work. If I could get her to write something, do it! Isabella dialed before she could second-guess herself. The phone rang 4 times before a woman answered, sounding harried. Melissa Torres. Melissa, it's Isabella Vaughn. I know it's late, and I know you're probably swamped with the news about Isabella. Yeah, I've been trying to reach you, actually. You want to comment on your stepmother's press conference? I want to tell you a story about what the Vaughn Foundation used to be, before Vanessa, before the galas and the photo ops. Isabella took a breath. Can we meet? 20 minutes later, Melissa was at Ryan's door, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a recorder already out. She looked around the apartment with barely concealed curiosity. Not what I expected, she said. I'm full of surprises lately. Isabella gestured to the couch. Thanks for coming. They sat, and Melissa didn't waste time. So what's the story you want to tell? The foundation started 15 years ago. My father and Dr. Harold Stevens, both of them had lost people to cancer. My mom, Dr. Stevens' wife. They wanted to help families who couldn't afford treatment. Not just cancer, but any serious medical condition where cost was a barrier. Isabella's voice steadied as she talked. The first year we helped 12 families. Covered treatments, medications, hotel stays for out-of-town care. Small numbers, but real impact. I remember, Melissa said. I covered your opening gala. Your father talked about changing the system from the inside. He meant it. For the first 5 years we grew carefully. Built relationships with hospitals, social workers, families in crisis. By year 5, we were helping over 200 families annually. Real people, real lives changed. What happened? Vanessa happened. Isabella's jaw tightened. She married my father 6 years ago. At first, it was subtle. Suggestions about optics, about cultivating relationships with bigger donors. Then it became about events instead of programs. By the time I walked away last year, we were spending more on fundraising galas than on actual aid. Melissa was writing fast. Can you prove that? I can get you the financial records. Budget allocations, program expenses, administrative costs. The numbers tell the story. Vanessa's going to say you're a disgruntled family member trying to damage her reputation. Probably, but I'm not talking about the will or the inheritance. I don't care about that. I care about what happens to the families who need help. Isabella met Melissa's eyes. There's a 6-year-old girl in the pediatric ward at City General right now. Leukemia. Her family can't afford the full treatment protocol. 3 years ago, the foundation would have stepped in automatically. Now, they're on a waiting list while the foundation plans a $50,000 gala. You have details on this case? Not yet, but I can get them. Isabella glanced at Ryan. I know someone who works at City General. Someone who sees these cases every day. Ryan had been listening quietly from the kitchen. Now he came over. You want me to talk to her? Would you mind? What exactly would I be saying? Melissa looked between them. Who is this? Ryan Carter, pediatric nurse. Isabella hesitated, not sure how to explain. He's been helping me navigate all this. A nurse. Melissa's expression sharpened with interest. You work at City General? Yeah. You see cases like what Isabella's describing? Kids who need help but can't afford treatment? Ryan nodded slowly. Every week. Sometimes every day. Would you be willing to talk on the record? Give specific examples. Obviously not names, HIPAA, and all that, but general cases? I don't know if that's a good idea, Ryan said carefully. I'm not trying to get involved in... You're already involved, Isabella said quietly. But I won't ask you to do something that puts your job at risk. Ryan looked at her, then at Melissa, then back at Isabella. What would you need from me? Examples of cases where the foundation used to help but doesn't anymore. Types of treatments, cost ranges, family situations. Background to show what the foundation meant to people who actually needed it. Melissa pulled out a card. Think about it. Call me if you're willing to talk. After Melissa left with promises to draft something by morning, Isabella collapsed back on the couch. That was either really smart or really stupid. Could be both. Ryan sat beside her. You sure you want to go this route? Once that article runs, there's no taking it back. I'm not sure about anything anymore. A week ago, I knew exactly who I was, or at least who I was supposed to be. Now I'm sleeping on a stranger's couch and planning to publicly fight my stepmother and dragging you into something that could blow up your whole life. Hey, I dragged myself into this. You just answered a phone. Wrong number that changed everything. Isabella smiled slightly. That's what you should title your memoir. I'm a pediatric nurse. Nobody wants to read my memoir. I don't know, single dad, wrong number, billionaire drama. Sounds like a movie to me. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Isabella's phone buzzed. Patricia. I saw the press conference, Patricia's text read. Don't respond publicly without talking to me first. This is exactly what she wants. You looking reactionary and emotional. Too late, Isabella typed back. Already talked to a journalist. Her phone immediately rang. Patricia sounded somewhere between furious and impressed. What journalist? Melissa Torres. She covered the foundation years ago. I gave her background on what we used to do versus what we do now. Isabella, I know. I should have called you first, but Vanessa set the narrative and I needed to counter it and Isabella stopped. I'm tired of playing defense. She wants to make this about me being difficult? Fine. I'll make it about the foundation's mission. Patricia was quiet for a moment. What exactly did you tell this journalist? Isabella recounted the conversation. When she finished, Patricia made a thoughtful sound. That's actually not bad. If we're going to fight this, public opinion matters. The board responds to pressure. If we can show that Vanessa's changes are unpopular, that the community wants the foundation to return to its original mission, then we have leverage. Maybe it's risky, but everything about this is risky. Patricia sighed. I'll have the injunction ready to file by Wednesday. In the meantime, I need you to track down Dr. Stevens. If we can get him on board, his voice carries weight with the other board members. I'll call him tomorrow. Good. And Isabella, get some sleep. You sound exhausted. After hanging up, Isabella realized how true that was. Exhausted didn't begin to cover it. She felt wrung out, emotionally and physically drained in a way that had nothing to do with the nap earlier. I should go, she said, standing. Find a hotel or something. I've imposed enough. Where's your stuff? Ryan asked. What? Your stuff. Clothes, toiletries, whatever you need. Where is it? At the estate. I grabbed my laptop and some documents, but I didn't really pack. So you're going to check into a hotel with no luggage? I'll figure it out. Or you could stay here. Ryan said it casually, like it wasn't a completely insane suggestion. Sophie's already asleep. The couch isn't terrible. And this way you're here in the morning when Melissa's article runs and everything hits the fan. Ryan, I can't. Why not? Because I've already disrupted your entire life. You have work tomorrow. Sophie has school. You don't need... I'm offering, Ryan interrupted. Not out of obligation or pity or whatever you're thinking. I'm offering because you need somewhere to be and I have space. That's it. Isabella wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some dignity, some independence. But the truth was she didn't want to be alone in a hotel room, didn't want to face the coming storm without... What? She barely knew Ryan. They'd met 4 days ago under the strangest circumstances imaginable. But he'd shown up. When she called in the middle of the night, when she fell apart at the estate, when she needed someone to tell her to fight, he'd shown up. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. Ryan pulled blankets and a pillow from the closet. Bathroom's down the hall. There's a spare toothbrush under the sink. Sophie's dentist gives them out like candy. Help yourself to whatever you need. He showed her where everything was, then disappeared into his room. Isabella stood in the small bathroom, looking at herself in the mirror. She looked different. Tired, yes, but also alive. More alive than she'd felt in months, maybe years. Her phone buzzed, an email from Melissa. Draft attached. Review and let me know if anything needs changing. Planning to publish at 6 a.m. Isabella opened the attachment and started reading. Melissa had taken everything she'd said and crafted it into something powerful. Not an attack on Vanessa, but a genuine examination of what the foundation had been versus what it was becoming. Statistics, quotes, the story of how it all began. And there, in the final paragraph, a single line that made Isabella's throat tighten. Isabella Vaughn says she's not fighting for money or property. She's fighting for the families who have nowhere else to turn. It was true. Somewhere in the last few days, this had stopped being about her father or Vanessa or the will. It had become about something bigger. She emailed back, "It's perfect. Run it." That night, Isabella lay on Ryan's couch, listening to unfamiliar sounds. The building settling, neighbors moving around, the city breathing outside. She should have been terrified. She was about to publicly challenge one of the most powerful women in the city. She had no home, no clear plan, and no guarantee any of this would work. But wrapped in borrowed blankets in a stranger's apartment, she felt something unexpected. Hope. Morning came fast. Ryan was up at 6, moving quietly around the kitchen. Isabella heard him, pretended to still be asleep for a few extra minutes, then gave up and sat up. "Coffee?" he offered. "Please." They sat at the small kitchen table, both checking phones. At exactly 6 a.m., Melissa's article went live. Within minutes, Isabella's phone started blowing up. "It's everywhere," she said, scrolling through notifications. "Every news site is picking it up." Ryan was reading over her shoulder. "Comments are mostly supportive. Mostly, there are plenty calling me entitled and accusing me of trying to weaponize charity for personal gain. Ignore those. Easy for you to say." Sophie wandered out, rubbing her eyes. She saw Isabella and smiled. "You stayed." "I did. Hope that's okay. It's great. Can Isabella take me to school, Dad?" "Bug, Isabella's got a lot going on today." "Actually," Isabella said, surprising herself, "I'd like that. If it's okay with your dad." Ryan looked uncertain. "You sure? It's just elementary school, nothing exciting." "I'm sure. I need to do something normal before everything goes completely crazy." An hour later, Isabella found herself walking into Riverside Elementary with Sophie's hand in hers, Ryan on Sophie's other side. Other parents stared, whispered. A few pulled out phones to take pictures. Isabella felt the familiar urge to hide, to run. Then Sophie squeezed her hand. "Don't worry about them. They're just surprised because you're famous, but you're nice, so they'll like you." The simple confidence of it made Isabella smile. They walked Sophie to her classroom, where a young teacher greeted them with barely concealed shock at seeing Isabella Vaughn dropping off a student. "Sophie talks about you all the time," the teacher said, recovering quickly. "I'm Ms. Chen. It's nice to finally meet you." "All good things, I hope," Isabella said. "She said you're learning to make pancakes and fighting bad guys. So yes, all good things." After dropping Sophie off, Ryan and Isabella walked back to the car in silence. Finally, Ryan spoke. "You okay?" Everyone was staring. "Yeah, that's going to happen for a while. How do you deal with it? People judging? Making assumptions?" Ryan shrugged. "You just do. After a while, you realize their opinions don't change your reality. Sophie's still my daughter. I'm still her dad. Everything else is just noise." Isabella's phone rang. "Patricia." "Did you see the article?" Isabella answered. "I saw it. Also saw that Vanessa's lawyers have already issued a response, calling it a manipulative PR stunt. But here's the interesting part. I've gotten 3 calls this morning from current foundation employees. Off the record, they're saying they agree with you, that they've been frustrated with the direction things have been going. That's good, right? It's very good. It means we might have inside support. People willing to testify about program cuts, budget reallocations, families turned away." Patricia paused. "I also heard from Dr. Stevens. He wants to meet with you, today if possible." Isabella's heart leaped. "He does?" "Apparently he saw the article and called me directly. Said it was about time someone stood up to Vanessa. Can you meet him at 2? "Yes, absolutely. Where?" Patricia gave her the address, a coffee shop in a quiet neighborhood. After hanging up, Isabella turned to Ryan. "Dr. Stevens wants to meet. This could change everything." "Good. That's good." Ryan checked his watch. "I've got shift in an hour. You'll be okay?" "I'll be fine. Go. Save lives. Do the important stuff." "This is important too." He looked at her seriously. What you're doing matters, Isabella. Don't forget that when it gets hard. She watched him drive away, then stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, gathering courage. Her phone buzzed with another notification, another news outlet picking up Melissa's article. Then another, and another. By the time 2 o'clock arrived, the story had gone national. Isabella Vaughn, billionaire heiress, fighting her stepmother over a charitable foundation. The narrative was writing itself, and for once, she was shaping it instead of being shaped by it. Dr. Harold Stevens was waiting at a corner table when Isabella arrived. He was in his 70s, distinguished, with kind eyes that reminded her painfully of her father. Isabella, he stood to greet her. You look so much like your mother. Dr. Stevens, thank you for meeting me. They sat, and he got straight to the point. I read Melissa Torres's article this morning. Then I read your stepmother's response. Then I spent the last few hours pulling old foundation records. He pushed a folder across the table. These are budget reports from 5 years ago versus last year. Look at program spending. Isabella opened the folder and felt her stomach drop. 5 years ago, 73% of the budget went directly to aid programs. Last year, it was 31%. The rest had gone to administrative costs, events, and what was vaguely labeled as strategic initiatives. This is worse than I thought, she said. It gets worse. I started making calls. Families who used to receive automatic assistance are now on waiting lists that stretch months. Hospital social workers who used to contact us regularly stopped calling because they know we won't help. Dr. Stevens leaned forward. Your father would be horrified. Then why did he leave everything to Vanessa? I don't know. We weren't as close the last few years, but I know he loved that foundation, loved what it represented. He paused. I also know he loved you, even when things were difficult between you. Isabella's eyes burned. I said terrible things to him. Our last conversation, I told him he cared more about his legacy than his daughter. Did you mean it? I was angry, hurt. But no, I didn't mean it. Then don't let that be how the story ends. Fight for what he built. Show him, show everyone what it was supposed to be. Dr. Stevens straightened. I'm still on the board. I still have a voice. Use it. Vanessa won't like that. I'm 76 years old and my wife is dead. I don't care what Vanessa likes. He smiled slightly. Besides, I've been looking for a good fight. Retirement is boring. They spent the next hour strategizing. Doctor. Stevens knew which board members might be swayed, which donors were unhappy with Vanessa's changes, which staff members were documenting everything in case someone finally challenged her. This is going to be ugly, he warned. Vanessa doesn't lose gracefully. I'm starting to figure that out. When Isabella finally left the coffee shop, her head was spinning with names and strategies and possibilities. She called Patricia and downloaded everything. Then she called Ryan. How'd it go? He answered. Dr. Stevens is in, fully in. He's got documentation, contacts, everything. That's amazing. I know, I can't believe this is actually happening. Isabella paused at a crosswalk. Ryan, I need to ask you something. Okay. That nurse Melissa wanted to interview. Were you serious about doing it? I don't know. I'm still thinking about it. Don't. I shouldn't have put you in that position. This is my fight, not yours. Isabella, I mean it. You've already done so much, more than anyone had a right to ask. But I can't drag you deeper into this. It's not fair to you or Sophie. Ryan was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? Sure. I've been a pediatric nurse for 8 years. In that time, I've watched dozens of families struggle with medical costs, watched kids not get treatments they needed because of money, watched parents make impossible choices between medication and rent. His voice was tight. I became a nurse to help people. But there's only so much I can do from inside the system. What you're fighting for, what the foundation used to do. That's real help. That's lives changed. So what are you saying? I'm saying I'll talk to Melissa. Give her examples, statistics, whatever she needs. Because this matters. And because somebody needs to speak up for the families who can't. Isabella felt tears threatening. You could lose your job. I won't use names. Won't violate HIPAA. I'll just tell the truth about what I see. He paused. Besides, They can't fire me for having opinions on my own time. Thank you, Isabella said quietly, for all of this, for believing in something that isn't even yours to fight for. Maybe it is now. Maybe it became mine the second you called the wrong number and I decided to answer. That evening, Ryan met with Melissa at a diner near the hospital. Isabella waited at his apartment with Sophie, helping with homework and trying not to obsessively check her phone. Is my dad in trouble? Sophie asked, looking up from her math worksheet. No, sweetheart. He's helping me with something important. The foundation thing? Yeah, the foundation thing. Sophie went back to her worksheet, then looked up again. Are you going to win? I don't know. I'm going to try really hard. That's what my dad always says. Try really hard, and that's all you can do. Sophie smiled. You'll win. I know it. Isabella wished she had that kind of certainty. Instead, she had files full of documentation, a lawyer who believed in long shots, an elderly doctor ready for one last fight, and a pediatric nurse putting his career on the line for families he'd never met. It wasn't much, but maybe it was enough. Ryan came home 2 hours later, looking drained. How'd it go? Isabella asked. I gave her everything. Case examples, cost breakdowns, the difference between what the foundation used to do and what it does now. He sank onto the couch. She's going to run it as a follow-up piece tomorrow. Ryan, it's done. No going back now. He looked at her. We're all in now. You, me, Dr. Stevens, everyone who's standing up. Vanessa's going to come at us with everything she's got. I know. Are you ready for that? Isabella thought about the estate she'd lost, the father she couldn't get back, the future that was nothing like what she'd planned. Then she thought about the families who needed help, the foundation's original mission, the chance to build something that actually mattered. No, she said honestly. But I'm doing it anyway. Sophie had fallen asleep on the floor, math worksheet abandoned. Ryan picked her up carefully, carried her to bed. When he came back, he found Isabella standing at the window, looking out at the city lights. You can still back out, he said quietly. Vanessa offered you a trust. You could take it, start over somewhere else, leave all this behind. Could you? If it was Sophie's future at stake, could you walk away? No. Then neither can I. Isabella turned to face him. This foundation, it's all I have left of my father. The good parts of him anyway, the parts that wanted to help people. I can't let Vanessa turn it into something unrecognizable and then just walk away. I have to try. Even if I fail, I have to try. Ryan nodded. Then we try. We? You think I gave that interview just for fun? I'm invested now. Me and Sophie both. Sophie's 6. Sophie's 6 and already more committed to this than most adults. Ryan smiled slightly. She's been telling everyone at school about how her friend Isabella is fighting bad guys. You're basically a superhero in her eyes. I'm terrified I'm going to let her down. Then don't. It's not that simple. Sure it is. You wake up every day and you fight. Some days you'll win, some days you'll lose, but you keep fighting. That's all anyone can do. He moved to stand beside her at the window. You're not alone in this, Isabella. Remember that when it gets hard. You're not alone anymore. Outside, the city kept moving, indifferent to their struggles. Tomorrow would bring Melissa's second article, Vanessa's response, the continued battle for control of a foundation that most people had never heard of, but that meant everything to the families it helped. Isabella's phone buzzed. Patricia. Board meeting scheduled for Friday, emergency session. Vanessa's trying to fast-track her restructuring plans before we can file the injunction. We need to be ready. 3 days. They had 3 days to build a case strong enough to convince a board that Vanessa's changes violated the foundation's core mission. We're not going to sleep much this week, are we? Isabella said. Probably not. You sure you signed up for this? Ryan looked at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. Yeah, I'm sure. They stood there for a long moment, two people who barely knew each other, but who'd somehow become essential to each other's fights. Tomorrow would bring chaos. But tonight, they had this: quiet understanding, shared purpose, and the strange comfort of not being alone. It wasn't the life Isabella had planned, but standing in Ryan's small apartment, preparing for a battle she might not win, she realized something surprising. She didn't want her old life back. She wanted this. The fight. The purpose. The feeling of mattering for reasons that had nothing to do with her last name. She wanted to become someone her father would have been proud of. And maybe, just maybe, she already was. The next 3 days blurred together in a chaos of preparation, legal documents, and sleepless nights. Ryan's apartment became war room central. Isabella's laptop perpetually open on the kitchen table. Patricia stopping by at odd hours with new developments. Dr. Stevens calling with updates from board members he'd been quietly lobbying. Sophie adapted with the kind of flexibility only kids seem to possess, treating the whole thing like an extended sleepover. She'd set up a command center in the corner with her coloring books and stuffed animals, announcing she was helping with strategy while drawing pictures of Isabella defeating dragons that looked suspiciously like Vanessa. Ryan worked his shifts at the hospital, came home to chaos, and somehow kept everything running. He made sure Sophie got to school on time, that everyone ate something resembling food, that Isabella occasionally stopped working long enough to sleep. "You don't have to do all this," Isabella said on Wednesday night, watching him wash dishes from yet another improvised dinner while she reviewed documents. "Do what?" "Take care of everything. Me, Sophie, this whole situation. You already have a full life." Ryan dried a plate, set it in the cabinet. "You think this isn't part of my life now?" "Ryan, Isabella, you're sleeping on my couch. Sophie asks about you every morning. Patricia knows my coffee order. This is my life now, whether we planned it or not." He turned to face her. "Besides, where else would I be?" She didn't have an answer for that. Melissa's second article had run on Tuesday, featuring Ryan's testimony about families struggling with medical costs. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Former foundation recipients started coming forward with their own stories. Children who'd received life-saving treatments thanks to the old foundation model, families who'd been turned away under Vanessa's new regime. By Wednesday afternoon, there was a petition circulating online calling for the foundation to return to its original mission. It had 50,000 signatures and counting. Vanessa responded with her own media blitz, appearing on morning shows looking poised and sympathetic, talking about the need to modernize outdated charitable models. She never mentioned Isabella by name, just spoke in vague terms about family members struggling with grief and the importance of honoring a loved one's final wishes. It was infuriating how good she was at it. Thursday morning, Patricia arrived at 7 with coffee and bad news. "Vanessa's team filed a motion to dismiss our injunction before we even filed it," she said, spreading documents across Ryan's kitchen table. "They're arguing we have no standing to challenge the foundation's direction since Isabella is no longer a primary beneficiary." "Can they do that?" Isabella asked, still in pajamas she'd borrowed from Ryan. Too big, sleeves rolled up, looking younger and more vulnerable than she had any right to. "They can try. The hearing is tomorrow at 9, right before the board meeting. Judge Martinez will decide whether our injunction has merit." Patricia looked grim. "If she dismisses it, we go into that board meeting with no legal leverage. What are our chances?" "Honestly, 50-50. Martinez is fair but conservative. She doesn't like injunctions unless there's clear evidence of harm." "We have evidence," Isabella said. "The budget reports, the testimonials, the families who were turned away. It's circumstantial. Good for public opinion, harder to prove legal wrongdoing." Patricia pulled out another file. "But I've been doing some digging. The Foundation's original charter has very specific language about its mission, language that Vanessa's proposed restructuring might violate." She spread out the pages, pointing to highlighted sections. Isabella leaned in, reading. "The Vaughn Foundation shall exist in perpetuity for the primary purpose of providing direct medical and financial assistance to families facing catastrophic healthcare costs," Isabella read aloud. "Primary purpose. That's our argument?" "It's our best argument. If we can show that Vanessa's changes shift the primary purpose away from direct assistance, we might have grounds to block them." Patricia looked at Isabella seriously. "But we need Dr. Stevens tomorrow. His testimony as a founding board member carries weight. Without him, he'll be there," Isabella said with more confidence than she felt. He promised. After Patricia left, Isabella sat at the table surrounded by documents, feeling the weight of everything pressing down. Tomorrow would decide it all. Either they'd get their day in court, or Vanessa would steamroll through her changes and there'd be nothing anyone could do to stop her. Ryan found her still sitting there an hour later, staring at the charter language like it might reveal some hidden answer. You should eat something, he said. Not hungry. Isabella, I'm scared. She said it quietly, not looking at him. Tomorrow could end before it even starts. All of this, the articles, the petition, Dr. Stevens, your testimony, none of it matters if the judge dismisses us tomorrow morning. Ryan sat down across from her. So what if she does? What? What if the judge dismisses the injunction? What happens then? Then Vanessa wins. She restructures the foundation however she wants, helps whoever she wants, which will be nobody who actually needs it, and everything my father built turns into exactly what he spent his whole life trying to avoid. And you? What happens to you? Isabella finally looked up. I don't know. I guess I take the trust money and I figure out how to live with the fact that I tried and failed. Or, Ryan said slowly, you do something else. Like what? Like start your own foundation. Isabella blinked. What? Think about it. If you can't save your father's foundation, build a new one. Take everything you've learned about what works and what doesn't and create something from scratch. Something Vanessa can't touch. Ryan, I don't have those kind of resources. The trust fund is comfortable, but starting a foundation from nothing, you have Dr. Stevens. You have the families who came forward with testimonials. You have public support and a platform and a story people care about. He leaned forward. And you have the one thing Vanessa doesn't. You actually give a damn about helping people instead of looking good while pretending to help people. Isabella stared at him. The idea was insane. Starting from nothing, building something real while Vanessa controlled the Vaughn name and resources. It would be impossibly hard. But it would be hers. I don't know if I can do that, she said. A week ago, you didn't know if you could fight Vanessa in court. But you're doing it. Ryan reached across the table, took her hand. You're stronger than you think, Isabella. You just need to believe it. She looked down at their joined hands, at the calluses on Ryan's fingers from years of hospital work, at her own smooth skin that had never done a day of real labor. They were so different, from such different worlds. A week ago, she would have said they had nothing in common. Now she couldn't imagine facing any of this without him. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. For letting me crash your life. For all of it. You didn't crash my life, you changed it. Ryan smiled slightly. Big difference. That night, Isabella couldn't sleep. She lay on Ryan's couch, listening to the building settle around her, thinking about the next day. About Judge Martinez and the board meeting and all the ways this could go wrong. Around 2 a.m., she gave up and went to the kitchen to make tea. She found Ryan already there, sitting at the table in sweatpants and a t-shirt, nursing a beer. Can't sleep either? She asked. Tomorrow's a big day. My testimony's probably going to make me real popular at the hospital. I'm sorry. I should never have... Stop apologizing. I made my choice. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. You're making me nervous pacing around. Isabella sat, wrapped her hands around the mug of tea she'd made. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Can I ask you something? Ryan said finally. Sure. What happens after? Assuming tomorrow goes well, you save the foundation, Vanessa backs down. What then? I haven't really thought that far ahead. Think about it now. Isabella considered. I guess I'd want to rebuild, get the foundation back to what it was. Maybe expand it, help more families, work with hospitals directly, create programs that actually reach people instead of just raising money at fancy parties. Sounds like a full-time job. Yeah, it would be. She looked at him. Why are you asking? Because I need to know if this is real. If you're in this for the long haul or if you're going to win tomorrow and then get bored and wander off to the next thing. He met her eyes. Sophie's attached to you. Hell, I'm attached to you. I need to know we're not just a temporary stop in your journey of self-discovery. The words hit harder than Isabella expected. You think I'd do that? I don't know. Would you? Isabella set down her mug. A week ago, I probably would have. A week ago, I was good at walking away when things got hard. But that was before all this. Before you and Sophie and fighting for something that actually matters. She took a breath. I'm not going anywhere, Ryan. Win or lose tomorrow, I'm seeing this through. And after, I want to build something real, something lasting, something my father would have been proud of. And us? Ryan asked quietly. Where do we fit? I don't know, Isabella admitted. I've never been good at relationships, never trusted anyone enough to let them really see me. But you've seen all of it, the breakdown, the fear, the mess. And you're still here. I'm still here. Why? Ryan was quiet for a long moment. You want the honest answer? Always. Because somewhere between that first phone call and now, I stopped being able to imagine my life without you in it. You and Sophie, you're both my world. And somehow, you've become part of that world too. He ran his hand through his hair. I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other. I know there are 1,000 logical reasons this doesn't make sense. But I don't care about logical anymore. Isabella felt tears threatening. Ryan, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever comes after, I'm here. For as long as you'll have me. As Isabella crossed the distance between them, pulled him into a kiss that tasted like tea and beer and possibility. When they broke apart, she was crying and laughing at the same time. I'm a mess, she said. Yeah, you are. And I'm probably going to screw this up at some point. Probably. And my life is complicated and about to get way more complicated. I know. And you still need... Yeah, Ryan said, pulling her close. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped up in each other in Ryan's tiny kitchen at 2 a.m, and Isabella thought that maybe this was what home felt like. Not a mansion or an estate or anything money could buy. Just this. Connection. Trust. Someone who saw all of you and stayed anyway. Morning came too fast. Isabella woke to Sophie bouncing on the couch, already dressed in her school clothes. Today's the big day. Dad says you're going to fight the bad guys in court. Sophie let her sleep. Ryan appeared in the doorway, already in dress pants and a button-down. He'd shaved, looked professional and nervous. It's okay. I'm up. Isabella sat up, reality crashing back. The hearing was in 3 hours. What time is it? 6:30. I made coffee. And toast. It's burned, but it's food. They went through the motions of mourning, Sophie chattering about school, Ryan double-checking his testimony notes, Isabella trying not to throw up from nerves. Patricia called at 7 to confirm they were meeting at the courthouse at 8:30. Vanessa's team will be there in force, Patricia warned. 3 lawyers minimum. They're going to try to intimidate us. Let them try, Isabella said, feeling steadier than she had any right to. Ryan dropped Sophie at Mrs. Patterson's. She had strict instructions to walk Sophie to school and pick her up after, just in case the day ran long. The older woman pulled Isabella aside before they left. You take care of my boy, she said, eyes fierce. And you win today. For all those babies who need help. I'll try. Don't try. Do. The courthouse was downtown, all marble and security and the weight of justice. Isabella had been here before for various social functions, but never like this. Never as the one asking for something, fighting for something. Vanessa was already there, looking perfect in a designer suit, surrounded by her legal team. She saw Isabella and smiled, cold, calculated. Isabella, still going through with this charade? It's not a charade. No? Then what would you call publicly attacking me while I'm grieving my husband, while I'm trying to honor his legacy? I'd call it protecting what he actually built from someone trying to destroy it. Vanessa's smile hardened. You're going to lose. You know that, right? Judge Martinez doesn't tolerate frivolous injunctions. She's going to dismiss you before lunch, and then we're going into that board meeting, and I'm going to restructure the foundation exactly how I planned. And there's nothing you can do to stop me. We'll see. Inside the courtroom, Judge Martinez was exactly what Patricia had described. Late 50s, sharp eyes, no-nonsense demeanor. She reviewed both motions with a speed that suggested she'd already made up her mind. Ms. Chen, she said, looking at Patricia, your client is seeking an injunction to prevent the Vaughn Foundation from restructuring its operational model. On what grounds? Violation of the Foundation's original charter, Your Honor. The charter specifies that direct medical assistance must be the primary purpose. Mrs. Vanessa Vaughn's proposed changes shift resources away from direct assistance toward administrative and fundraising operations. The foundation has a board of directors. They're voting on these changes. Why should this court intervene in internal governance? Because the changes violate the foundational documents that created the entity. It's not internal governance if it contradicts the core mission. Judge Martinez turned to Vanessa's lead attorney. Mr. Brennan? Your Honor, this is a transparent attempt by a disinherited beneficiary to regain control she willingly abandoned. Isabella Vaughn has no standing to challenge the foundation's direction. She's not on the board. She's not a major donor. She's the founder's daughter, Patricia interrupted, and she has documentation showing systematic deviation from the charter requirements. Documentation that's been taken out of context and manipulated for media attention, Brennan shot back. The foundation has every right to evolve with changing times. Mrs. Vaughn's modernization plans will increase overall impact by decreasing direct aid to families in crisis, Patricia countered. Your Honor, we have testimony from hospital social workers, former recipients, even foundation staff who've documented the shift away from the primary mission. Judge Martinez held up her hand. I've read both motions. I've reviewed the charter language, and I've seen the media coverage. She looked directly at Isabella. Ms. Vaughn, this is highly unusual. You're asking this court to interfere in a private foundation's governance based on interpretation of mission language. Isabella stood, heart pounding. Your Honor, I'm asking the court to enforce the terms my father set when he created the foundation. He wanted to help families who couldn't afford medical care. That was his purpose. That was his legacy. And if the court allows these changes to proceed, that legacy dies. The families he wanted to help, they're the ones who'll suffer. Your father left everything to Mrs. Vanessa Vaughn, the judge said, including control of the foundation. Are you asking me to override his expressed wishes? I'm asking you to uphold them, because the foundation isn't supposed to be about who controls it. It's supposed to be about who it helps. Judge Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at Brennan. The board meeting is scheduled for this afternoon? Yes, Your Honor. Then here's what we're going to do. I'm granting a temporary injunction, 48 hours, during which no major restructuring can be voted on or implemented. That gives both parties time to present full arguments with supporting documentation. She looked at Patricia. You'll need more than media coverage and testimonials. I want financial records, charter analysis, proof of material deviation from stated mission. We can provide that, Your Honor. You have until Monday. We'll reconvene then for a full hearing. The gavel came down. Court adjourned. Isabella felt her knees nearly give out. 48 hours. It wasn't a win, but it wasn't a loss either. It was a chance. Outside the courtroom, Patricia was already on her phone coordinating next steps. Dr. Stevens appeared from somewhere, looking energized. That was brilliant, he said to Isabella. The way you spoke to the judge. Your father would have been proud. We haven't won yet. No, but we're still fighting. That's what matters. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. in the foundation's main conference room. Ironic, holding it in the building that bore Isabella's father's name, while Vanessa tried to erase everything he'd built. Isabella hadn't been inside the foundation headquarters in over a year. Walking through the lobby felt surreal. Her father's portrait still hung in the main hall, stern and dignified. She stopped in front of it, and Ryan came to stand beside her. He looks like you, Ryan observed. I look like my mother. Everyone always said so. The eyes are his, and that expression, the one you get when you're about to tell someone they're wrong, but you're going to be polite about it, that's definitely his. Isabella smiled despite herself. I used to come here as a kid. He'd bring me on weekends, let me sit in board meetings. I thought it was so boring. All these adults talking about budgets and programs. I didn't understand what it meant. And now? Now I understand it was the most important work he ever did. The conference room was already filling up when they arrived. 8 board members total, plus Vanessa and her lawyers, Patricia and Dr. Stevens. Isabella had expected hostility, but what she got was curiosity. Several board members she didn't recognize, new additions since Vanessa's takeover. Vanessa called the meeting to order with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. As you know, we were prepared to vote on the restructuring proposal today, but certain parties have obtained a temporary injunction. She looked directly at Isabella. So instead, we're going to have a discussion about the Foundation's future direction. I'd like to speak first, Dr. Stevens said, standing before anyone could object. As the only remaining founding board member, I think I have something relevant to say. Vanessa's jaw tightened, but she nodded. Of course, Harold. Dr. Stevens pulled out papers, the same budget comparisons he'd shown Isabella. He walked the board through the numbers methodically, 5 years ago versus now. Direct aid versus administrative costs. Families helped versus families turned away. This isn't about resistance to change, he concluded. It's about whether we're still fulfilling the mission William Vaughan established, and the data clearly shows we're not. The data shows we're being more strategic, Vanessa countered, focusing on sustainable impact rather than short-term fixes. Sustainable impact, Dr. Stevens repeated. Is that what we're calling it when we spend $50,000 on a gala but turn away a 6-year-old with leukemia because her family's on a waiting list? The room went silent. That's not fair, Vanessa said. You're taking one case out of context. It's not one case. Ryan stood, and Isabella's heart clenched. I'm Ryan Carter, pediatric nurse at City General. I see these cases every week. Families who used to get help from this foundation automatically now wait months. Some don't get help at all. Kids don't get treatments they need because this foundation is too busy worrying about optics. We can't help everyone, Vanessa said sharply. You're not trying to help anyone, Ryan shot back. You're trying to make yourselves look good while helping no one. One of the board members, a woman Isabella didn't know, raised her hand. I'm confused. I joined the board 6 months ago because Vanessa said we'd be expanding services. But what I'm hearing suggests the opposite. We are expanding, Vanessa insisted. We're building partnerships, creating sustainable models. We're doing what my father would have hated, Isabella said, standing. She pulled out her phone, opened the petition. 63,000 people have signed this in the last 3 days. 63,000 people saying they want the foundation to return to direct aid. That's not media manipulation. That's people caring about what this foundation was supposed to be. Another board member spoke up, older man, skeptical expression. Ms. Vaughn, with all due respect, you walked away from the foundation over a year ago. Why should we listen to you now? Because I was wrong, Isabella said simply. I walked away because I was angry at my father, and I couldn't separate the foundation from our personal issues. That was a mistake. But I've spent the last week learning what this foundation meant to people. Real people with real problems who got real help. And I can't walk away from that. None of us should. Vanessa stood. This is very moving, Isabella, but the reality is that the old model wasn't sustainable. We were hemorrhaging money, helping relatively few people. We helped 200 families last year my father was alive, Dr. Stevens interrupted. How many did you help last year, Vanessa? We helped, Vanessa faltered. We distributed over $1 million in grants. To hospitals and research institutions, not to families, not to the people William wanted to help. The board members were looking at each other now, having quiet conversations. The woman who'd spoken earlier stood. I move that we table the restructuring vote pending a full audit of the last 2 years' spending and program outcomes. I want to see exactly where our money went and who it helped. Second, Dr. Stevens said immediately. Vanessa looked furious. That's not necessary. We have quarterly reports. I want an independent audit, the woman said firmly, before we make any major changes. All in favor? 6 hands went up. Only 2 stayed down, both Vanessa's friends. The motion carried. Vanessa stood abruptly, gathering her papers. This meeting is adjourned. One more thing, Isabella said before Vanessa could leave. I'm announcing my own foundation, the Carter Vaughan Medical Assistance Fund, dedicated to providing immediate direct aid to families facing catastrophic medical costs. We'll operate independently, partner directly with hospitals, and focus on the families who fall through the cracks. Vanessa turned slowly. You're naming it after him. She gestured at Ryan. I'm naming it after people who actually care, Isabella said. Ryan's the one who showed me what your changes really meant, what they cost. So yeah, his name goes first. Ryan looked stunned. Isabella hadn't told him she was planning this. She'd barely known herself until the words came out. But standing there, watching Vanessa's fury and the board members' interest in Dr. Stevens' proud smile, she knew it was right. After the meeting, chaos. Board members wanting to talk, Patricia already drafting press releases, Dr. Stevens volunteering to chair the new foundation's advisory board. Ryan pulled Isabella aside while everyone else was occupied. Did you name a foundation after me without asking? Yeah, sorry, I should have. It's insane. I know. I'm a nurse. I don't know anything about running a foundation. Good thing I've spent my whole life around one. Isabella took his hand. I meant what I said in there. You showed me what mattered, what my father wanted to do. I can't save his foundation. Maybe nobody can, but I can build something new, something that actually helps, and I want to do it with you. Isabella. I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other. I know I'm probably going to mess this up at some point because I'm really good at messing things up. But I also know that a week ago I was drowning, and you answered a phone you didn't have to answer. You showed up when you didn't have to show up. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. So yeah, your name goes on the foundation, because none of this happens without you. Ryan pulled her into a kiss right there in the hallway, not caring who saw. When they broke apart, he was grinning. A foundation named after me. Sophie's going to lose her mind. Is that a yes? It's a hell yes. The next few weeks were a blur. The independent audit confirmed what everyone suspected. Vanessa had systematically shifted resources away from direct aid. The board voted to restore the original funding model, and Vanessa resigned in protest, taking her society friends with her. Isabella didn't care. She was too busy building something new. The Carter Vaughan Medical Assistance Fund launched with a website, a small office donated by Dr. Stevens, and a partnership with 3 hospitals, including City General. The trust fund Isabella inherited became seed money. Donations poured in from people who'd read the articles, signed the petition, believed in the mission. Within 2 months, they helped their first family, a 4-year-old with cystic fibrosis whose parents couldn't afford the medications. Ryan connected them through his hospital contacts. Isabella processed the application in 48 hours. The family sent a video of their daughter laughing, playing, breathing easier. Isabella watched it on repeat, crying every time. This is it, she told Ryan that night. This is what my father wanted. This feeling. Yeah, Ryan agreed, pulling her close. This is it. A year later, Ryan stood in his apartment, the same apartment where Isabella had first shown up lost and desperate, and looked around at how much had changed. There were still toys on the floor and dishes in the sink, but now there were also Isabella's shoes by the door, her laptop on the table, her coffee mug in the cabinet. Somewhere along the way, his apartment had become their apartment. His life had become their life. Sophie was at a friend's house for the evening. Isabella was at the foundation office, working late on a grant application. Ryan had the place to himself, which was rare these days. He pulled out his phone and texted her. Come home? 10 more minutes, came the reply. Then, okay, 5 minutes. I miss you. Ryan smiled and started making dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and sauce, the kind of simple meal they'd shared dozens of times now. While the water boiled, he thought about the last year. The foundation was thriving. They'd helped over 100 families, built relationships with a dozen hospitals, even gotten some national press coverage. Isabella had found her calling, thrown herself into the work with a passion that amazed everyone. But more than that, she'd found herself. The woman who answered that wrong number a year ago had been lost, drowning, desperate. The woman who came home to their apartment every night was strong, purposeful, alive. And somehow, impossibly, she loved him. He heard her key in the lock. She had her own key now, had for months. She came in looking tired but happy, kicked off her shoes, came straight to him. Hey, she said, wrapping her arms around him from behind while he stirred sauce. Hey yourself, how'd the grant application go? Good, really good. If we get it, we can expand to 2 more hospitals. She rested her head against his back. But I don't want to talk about work. Tell me something good. Sophie got an A on her math test. That's my girl. What else? Mrs. Patterson made cookies and left them by the door with a note saying, "We're too skinny." Isabella laughed. We're not too skinny. Try telling her that. Ryan turned in her arms. One more thing. What? He pulled a small box from his pocket. Not fancy, not expensive by Isabella's old standards, Just a simple ring with a single stone that had taken 3 months of his salary to afford. Isabella went very still. I know we haven't been together that long, Ryan said. I know we kind of did everything backward. Moved in together before we even went on a real date, started a foundation before we figured out what we were to each other. I know by all logical measures, this is too fast. Ryan, but I also know that you're it for me. You and Sophie, you're my whole world. And I don't want to wait for some arbitrary amount of time that makes this seem more reasonable. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, building foundations, helping families, burning pancakes on Sunday mornings. All of it. He opened the box. So yeah, will you marry me? Isabella was crying, laughing, nodding all at once. Yes, yes, you idiot. Obviously, yes. He slid the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. And kissed her while the pasta water boiled over and the smoke alarm started beeping, and none of it mattered because this was them. Chaotic and imperfect and exactly right. Later, they sat on the floor eating burned pasta straight from the pot because they'd been too distracted to remember plates, and Isabella kept looking at her ring like she couldn't quite believe it was real. A year ago, she said, I called the wrong number in the middle of the night because I was desperate and alone and didn't know who else to call. Best wrong number ever, Ryan said. And now look at us. Engaged. Running a foundation. Living in your tiny apartment that I love more than any mansion I ever lived in. Our tiny apartment. Our tiny apartment, Isabella agreed. She leaned her head on his shoulder. You know what the crazy part is? What? If my father's will had gone the way I wanted, if I had inherited everything, if Vanessa had never happened, none of this would exist. I'd probably still be floating through life, pretending to care about charity galas while doing nothing meaningful. Sophie wouldn't have become the best part of my life, and I would never have met you. You think everything happens for a reason? No. I think terrible things happen, and we get to choose what we do with them. My father died. Vanessa tried to destroy his legacy. I lost my home. All of that was terrible. She lifted her head to look at him. But I chose to fight. I chose to build something new. I chose you, and that's what mattered. Ryan pulled her closer. For what it's worth, I'm glad you called that wrong number. Me too. Outside, the city hummed with Saturday night energy. Somewhere out there, families were getting help from a foundation that existed because a grieving woman had dialed the wrong number, and a pediatric nurse had decided to answer. Kids were getting treatments. Parents were breathing easier. Lives were changing. And in a small apartment where love had taken root in the unlikeliest soil, two people who'd found each other in the darkness held each other and planned a future that neither could have imagined a year ago. Sophie came home an hour later, took one look at Isabella's ring, and screamed loud enough that Mrs. Patterson came running from next door. You're getting married! You're getting married, and I can be in the wedding and wear a pretty dress, and can I call you Mom? Isabella's eyes filled with tears. If you want to. I want to. Sophie launched herself at Isabella, wrapping her arms around her neck. I always wanted a mom, and now I get the best one. Ryan watched them, his daughter and his fiancée, and thought about the journey that had brought them here. The wrong number. The desperate call in the middle of the night. The choice to show up when he could have hung up and gone back to sleep. One small choice that had changed everything. Sophie fell asleep between them on the couch later, worn out from excitement. Ryan and Isabella sat on either side, watching some movie neither was paying attention to. What are you thinking about? Isabella asked quietly. How different my life looks now than it did a year ago. Good different or scary different? Both. Ryan looked at her over Sophie's sleeping form. Mostly good, though. Yeah, Isabella agreed. Mostly good. And it was. Not perfect. They still fought sometimes, still struggled with balancing the foundation and family and everything else. Isabella still had nightmares about losing her father, still carried guilt about their last fight. Ryan still worried about money, still worked too many shifts, still felt out of his depth in Isabella's world sometimes. But they had each other. They had Sophie. They had work that mattered, and a home they'd built together, and a future that stretched out ahead of them, full of possibility. 6 months later, they got married in the same small church where Sophie had been baptized, with Mrs. Patterson crying in the front row and Dr. Stevens giving Isabella away. The reception was at Tony's diner because that's where their first real conversation had happened, and tradition mattered. Sophie was the flower girl, taking her job so seriously that she counted every petal she dropped to make sure the spacing was even. The photo from that day, Ryan and Isabella laughing while Sophie adjusted Isabella's dress with fierce concentration, became the most treasured picture in their apartment. The foundation continued to grow. By their second anniversary, they'd helped over 500 families. They'd opened satellite offices in 3 cities. Isabella had testified before Congress about healthcare access. Ryan had been promoted to head nurse and used his position to create better referral systems for families in crisis. And through it all, they came home to each other. To their apartment that they'd finally upgraded, slightly bigger, same neighborhood, still close to Mrs. Patterson. To Sophie, who'd grown into a fierce, compassionate 10-year-old who wanted to be a doctor so she could help people like her parents did. To a life built not on money or status or anything they'd inherited, but on choices they'd made and work they'd done and love they'd chosen every single day. Sometimes, late at night when neither could sleep, Isabella would tell Ryan about her father. The good parts she'd forgotten, the parts that looked different now with time and distance. How he'd taught her to believe in helping people. How he'd shown her what legacy really meant. "I think he'd be proud," Ryan would say. "I think so too." And in those quiet moments, in the darkness of their bedroom, with the city sounds drifting through the window, Isabella would think about that desperate phone call a year ago. The wrong number that had saved her life. The stranger who'd become everything. The choice that had changed it all. She'd started with nothing. No home, no family foundation, no plan. Just determination and hope, and people who believed in her. She'd built something better than anything she'd lost. And every day she got to wake up next to the man who'd answered a phone call in the middle of the night and decided that a stranger's pain mattered enough to show up. That was the real legacy. Not money or foundations or names on buildings, just showing up, choosing to care, deciding that connection mattered more than convenience. One wrong number, one choice. Everything changed. And neither of them would have had it any other way.